All right, welcome to MazzaMedia, ladies and gentlemen. It is Sunday evening, June 8th. Had to look at the calendar to validate that date before I said it. I didn't want to say June 7th or June 9th, but we are live here on YouTube and we are ready to go. It's going to be a big fundraiser tonight. We have many special guests. Some of everyone's favorite people from across YouTube and other social media platforms are here tonight, and we're going to have a big show. So I want to start off with just before we really get into it here and bring on our guests with a quick little message that I have for the Karen Read movement and really for other people that are naysayers against really anti-Karen Read folks out there. We are going to talk about why we're doing a fundraiser. We're doing a fundraiser today. We're also promoting a standout that Mizzy Deanna, Crosby, and many others are putting together that's coming up very soon. But what is the importance of doing a fundraiser? Why is it important to raise money for Karen Read? And additionally, why are Karen Read supporters continuing to raise money for Karen Read? And in my mind and in my heart, quite honestly, I think raising funds for Karen Read is still of the utmost importance. I understand that the trial may end soon. It looks like the defense may even rest at some point this week, as early as Tuesday. Some think as late as Friday. Some think it may actually go in the next week. But however, let's not forget what happened last time. And I'm not trying to be negative here, but essentially, no one foresaw a second trial coming at this point. The first trial just 1 year ago. We truly have no idea what's to come. Will this all end soon with an acquittal, or will it be another mistrial? Could Karen Read even be convicted by this jury, which I do not anticipate? Either way, I feel that raising money is still a priority here. And that's why we're doing this show tonight. And this is also a part of the reason why my shows, and I'm not trying to stand tall in a chair and point attention to myself when I say this, but I'll just say this is why my focus has been towards driving in funds for Karen Read's defense fund, because I don't know if in a week or two here, or in days or whatever, that Karen Read finds herself in a situation where it's another mistrial, or it's another hung jury / mistrial, and here we go a year from now or months from now getting ready for a third trial. And my attitude and my belief system is that I feel that we should continue to raise money for Karen because of the fact that anything could happen here in the coming days. I don't for a moment underestimate what could happen in a negative way against Karen. Like I said, I don't think that she'll be acquitted. I don't think she'll be convicted. But I don't think, with absolute confidence she'll be acquitted either, just because of what happened last time around. I didn't trust the jury selection process last year when they poached many jurors that were pro Karen Read, and I didn't trust the verdict slip last year either. And right now, basically vigilant in a mental state in preparation for this to go down again. And if it goes down again, don't be shocked. Don't be shocked about this, because these are the people that are also got multiple charges on aid and Carney. Let's not forget that. So that's not a scare tactic for me to the Karen Read folks, but it is for me something that I think we need to be alert and expecting. And I also hope that this time around there'll be a different result, and that this time around Karen Read will be acquitted of all charges, and that this thing will end once and for all, and Karen can move on with the next steps of her life, which includes, but it's not limited to, following a lot of lawsuits against a lot of entities in the state of Massachusetts, and basically raining down the fire that's been rained down upon her for the better part of over 3 years now. And I think that that's my personal opinion and really how I see all this. And realistically, why I'm continuing to raise funds here, because I don't want to take my eye off the ball in terms of raising funds for Karen. I don't want there to be any lapse in fundraising, and not that there is. Fundraising has been fantastic right along, but for me, when I'm pulling my weight for supporting Karen Read, I want to make sure my shows for the time being are about raising funds for Karen and continuing to drive that for her in preparation of a potential third trial, which I hope does not happen. So tonight, we are looking into multiple streams and multiple avenues across the internet for people that have a presence here, that have raised a lot of awareness for what's gone on. And that's not limited to the Karen Read case. It could be Enrique Delgado Garcia. It could also be Sandra Birchmore, just en route, etc. So I've invited a few guests on this show, and here we go. We have Brian LTL joining tonight's show. We have Britt Happens joining tonight's show. We have attorney Nan Gallagher joining tonight's show. And we have a very special guest. Last minute, was able to make it on. We have Mizzy joining tonight's broadcast. I'm very excited for this panel tonight. And before I introduce everybody formally or verbally, I should say, with the back and forth communication, I should say, the Karen Read Fundraising link is pinned to the top of your chat. Please write Mazza in your donation message to Karen Read's Defense Fund to have your donation counted in this fundraiser tonight. And it should be counted, and I'll be counting that throughout the broadcast tonight. And with that all said, let's start talking to our guests here. And let's just see, maybe that's better. Maybe that's a better, let me move that's good. That looks very good right there. So great. So Brian LTL is with us tonight. He had one of his biggest shows of all time. And I know the viewership was at, I think, one point, well over 2,000 viewers on a Sunday afternoon. Ted Daniel from Boston 25 joined his program. And Brian, just go ahead. First of all, welcome to the show, and just tell us a little bit about you're probably coming down from a big, big mental, all the excitement, and now it's like, okay, time to do another show. But tell us about it.
Yeah, Mark, thank you for having me on. Obviously, we've gotten to know each other over this last, year and a half, and have such a great friendship together, and have come over to my channel and helped out a lot. So when you asked me, I said, absolutely, we'll come over and do this fundraiser with you. And I love just doing this to get up and talk with such amazing people on the panel that have been, such a huge contribution to Karen Read's defense and spreading the word out there. Because as we saw, Karen typically does not get a lot of positive press in our mainstream media. But, I wanted to reach out to Ted. And I said this, and actually Nan was there a couple of weeks ago. We were out there at the courthouse. Ted was walking very rigorously in front of us, and I yelled out to him. I said, "Hey, Ted, great job with the 2-hour interview you did with Karen Read." And he turned around, and he looked at me, and as Nan is my witness, standing right there, he said, "You've been doing such a great job on your channel itself." And I went, "Oh, thank you." And he said he looks at our channels. I mean, we got that in the interview today. But anyway, so this all kind of started out as kind of I was kind of peeping in on some of his posts, and I've been seeing that he's been doing these 30-minute spots with Peter Tragos, the lawyer, and I just kind of popped on the comment, and I said, "Ted, when are you going to come over and do my show?" And he literally said to me, he said, "I'll reach out to you." So I don't like to wait on things. I reached out, I dropped an email, and we went through the process, and I had him on the show. It was such a great interview. I thought, I didn't want to take away too much of his time, an hour. We did an hour. I thought the show flowed really great. And we got down. I think he kind of opened up a lot more than I thought he was going to. And that was kind of the way that I wanted to approach it, was just pose some questions to him and see how he would respond. And I think he said a lot of nice things about the Reads. He talked particularly about the Free Karen Read movement, how much he thought it was such a great thing, and the power of people. And that's what we've been doing here. And then had some really nice things to say about Aiden as well. Without him not breaking this wide open, we probably all wouldn't be here. So that was really good. It was just a great interview. It was really fun.
Perfect. That's awesome, Brian.
Besides his Wi-Fi connection, they just wanted to quit on him. But about 25 minutes in, after it dumped him off and he came back, it started to straighten out. So
that's awesome. Brian, thank you so much for being here and taking part in this fundraiser. You've done a lot, and you've also given back a lot of, you've given back a lot of yourself, especially with donations to Karen Read. And we definitely respect and appreciate that for you. And it really can't be said enough that, you've built a very big show off of many topics, as we all have. But at that, you've been the heart of the Karen Read supporters as well. Out there in the front lines many times at multiple standouts on a constant basis, and then also contributed a lot of funds to Karen Read's Defense Fund, which has been one of the most impressive things about you, and one of the things I think a lot of us admire the most about you, Brian.
Oh, hey, listen, I appreciate that. I'm just me. I just do things that I feel are good. And I don't want anybody to discount anything that they haven't done, because everybody on this panel and every creator that has decided to, turn on their camera in support of Karen Read, we're all part of that process. I'm just one piece of the pie. Yourself, and all these people on this panel would not this movement wouldn't be what it is, and all the people watching in the chat too.
Yeah, that's right.
Would not be what it is. And Alan Jackson said to me, the first time I ever went in to go sit in trial, and I remember him standing and talking to me and said, I really appreciate all the things that you all have done, because this would be a completely different trial publicly for Karen. And I truly believe that, and kudos to all the people that have ever turned their camera on, made a sign, stood out at a standout in the rain, snow, whatever it may be, stand out in front of that courthouse on very, very hot days. We've all been there. If it's not without all of you, this case would be completely different for Karen. So again, Mark, I'm just one piece of the pie. I'm just here to hang out for the ride and help as much as I can.
Absolutely. But, with that said, Brian, we don't want to ever, not underestimate what you've done and what you've contributed, which you deserve to have the full respect and acknowledgement for. And we should fully, respect and acknowledge everybody, people in the chat that have been promoting this for the longest time. We have Britt Happens on this show, who's from Florida. And I think that's one of the great things about this whole Karen Read of supporters. It's not just a Massachusetts thing. It's even an international thing. But Britt's from Florida, came up here just about a couple weeks ago, was on LTL Media with myself and a few others, and Lauren, DC. That was quite a great weekend as well. So Britt, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, this movement has transcended all kinds of lines, state lines, international lines, party lines, everything I can think of. There's been a lot of diversity in this movement, and this movement's also brought out some of the best in humanity. It's restored my faith in a lot of things. So I've been very blessed to have been part of this, maybe a little later than some of us. I don't know if it's because of where I am geographically or what, but I heard about it later, but I jumped in, 10 toes right in the deep end. I was, so upset to see, what's happening in my country. And, if you don't think that this is just happening in Massachusetts, or that this is in some form or fashion just going to be staying in that bubble, you're very wrong. One thing that I've been saying for a long time is that if it's allowed anywhere, it's going to be allowed everywhere. So I'm very glad to be part of it.
It's awesome. You've done a great job, and you've had a lot of great shows. And additionally, tomorrow night you have a show coming up as well with Mizzy.
I do. So we'll have Mizzy, we'll have hopefully Deanna, and we'll also be having Jen Root. So if you guys aren't aware of some of the other cases that have very strong connections to Karen Read's case, Mizzy is doing a whole lot for the Sandra Birchmore case. And we also are going to have Jen Root, who has obviously been doing a ton for her brother, Just on Root. So that'll be tomorrow night on my channel, Britt Happens. That's just the name of it. It's Britt Happens with 2 T's. So yeah, feel free to tune in tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you, Brett. With that said, let's bring Mizzy into a formal introduction onto this program. Mizzy, thank you so much for coming on tonight's show. Big standout coming up on June the 12th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. I'll first welcome you to the show and say hello to you. Glad to have you here. Thank you for being here, and take it away.
Yeah, we have a standout on the 12th, 2 to 4, but we have a little problem with it. Beth threw in a little bit of a problem. She might be doing court the whole day. So we want to make sure everybody pays attention to our social media, because we are still planning on having it. Unless it goes all day, we might pivot. So make sure you follow either Jen Root, Deanna Corby, at Sandra Birchmore on X, or Justice for Sandra Birchmore on Facebook. We might change things up, but please make sure you keep an eye out for that. But what we're going to do is it's called the Stronger Together. We did another one a few months ago, and it was just all 3 groups coming together, showing Michael Morrissey that we are stronger together. The Justice for Sandra Birchmore group and the Just on Root group want to make sure that Morrissey knows that we stand with Karen too. And, you know, the Read family has been so gracious and in support of me trying to get justice for Sandra. And we are stronger together. So we want to make sure that, you know, these people know that it doesn't just end with Karen. There are other cases, but we are all in this. We want to make sure that, you know, it's not just Karen's case. We want to make sure that, you know, everything that's going on with Karen's case, but also everything else she's going to have to be going through, that we are saying we're going to stand by her, because, you know, she has the civil case also after this. We want to make sure that they know we are not going anywhere. We want to make sure they know that, you know, I'm not going anywhere. My group is not going anywhere. The Justice for Sandra Birchmore group is going to stand by other causes. As Britt said, with 10 toes down, we're going to continue to be there, you know, and I know Jen Root is not going to give up her brother's case. She's going to keep pushing her brother's case. And that's why all of these causes, you know, need to work together, because we also have another thing coming up. Michael Morrissey next year is up for re-election, and we need to get him out of office. So this is where we take our power behind, you know, free Karen Read, justice for Sandra Birchmore, and justice for Just on Root, all together and combine and get him out of office. So if you're able to come down, please come down. It's 2 to 4 on the 12th at Michael Morrissey's office. But like I said, there's a caveat. Make sure you pay attention to our social medias in case we have to move things around.
Perfect.
Thank you for having me, Mazza.
You're welcome, Mizzy. Thank you for coming on the show. And then we have many attorneys have been very invested in following this case, whether it's the lawyer, you know, Melanie Little, Mark Betterow, of course, and really one of the big name attorneys here is Nan Gallagher, who's sort of onto the social media scene and been on many shows and has really, you know, given her opinion and made a lot of trips to court so far as well. So Nan, thank you so much for being on this show. I know you've had a very busy weekend, but I can't thank you enough.
Oh, thanks so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Did have a little busy weekend in St. Louis, and they know out in St. Louis, which when I threw a tweet out on Friday night, seeing if anyone wanted to join me for the Cardinals-Dodgers game, there was a very significant response. So it was great to meet FKR supporters in the Midwest, and it's wonderful to be here. And I'm going to continue to make Massachusetts my home away from home. I agree with all of the co-hosts this evening that there's a lot of work to be done. And I am very optimistic Karen's going to be acquitted. But at the same time, there's such an interconnectedness between, for example, as Mizzy was saying, and by the way, Mizzy, it's such a pleasure to be on the same panel with you. I've been on panels with everyone here, and you and I are like kind of passing each other on social media. So I'm kind of fangirling. But I have to say the Birchmore case has been something that's been extremely touching to me. I'm very interested in it. In fact, my kids said to me, well, when Karen is acquitted, Mommy, are you going to stop going up there? And I said, no, there's more work to be done. So that's why fundraisers like this are so important, keeping the momentum. Don't take your foot off the gas, and I'll help however I can. Anyone just ask.
That's awesome, Nan. And
Can I ask now? Can I say, come join me on my channel to talk about Sandra Birchmore when Karen's, you know, unfreed Karen?
Absolutely. Mizzy, I know a lot about the case, certainly not as much as you and others, but I'm really been aggressively following it. I have a lot of thoughts. I would love that. Just message me and we'll make it happen. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry, Mazza.
No, it's perfect. You know, this is so great about everybody that's supporting everything here is the way we've all interconnected here and we're going on each other's shows. And it's just been amazing how many people have volunteered their time, whether being on someone's show or vice versa. Me and Brian, for example, you know, we've been on each other's shows. Me and Britt, you know, me and Brian were on Britt's show one time recently. It's just been awesome. That's what's so great about all of this. And we're thankful for all that. So we got a lot to talk about in the past week. One of the big things I was debating on Friday night amongst myself was what was the moment of the week? What was the showdown of the week? We had Kelly Dever versus
Oh.
Alan Jackson, and we had
Lucas
Dr. Wolf
Saltz.
versus Hank Brennan.
Come on, Mark. Let's get it right. Veruca Saltz.
Okay, there we go.
So
Yeah.
appropriate. It
Yeah.
really
She
is.
looks like her, and her attitude is like her. It's
She's
uncanny.
It
Veruca
is.
Saltz.
Yeah.
Mhm. She could
She
have
remind-
turned into a blueberry at any moment
I
and just
know.
Yeah.
rolled out of that courtroom.
I was trying so hard to make the lady who was the psychotherapist from Step Brothers,
Yes.
and then Brian just was already kind of on the whole Charlie and the Chocolate Factory reference. I just couldn't get my reference to stick. But Brian's reference I thought was better, because actually after I had mine, I'm like, yeah, mine is it's good, but it's really
good.
not. It's not quite what Brian's was, which I thought was an even better reference, quite honestly. So that was a riot. But her behavior on the stand, as we saw this past week, was even noted, Brian, in your show this afternoon, by Ted Daniel, who didn't really elaborate much on that, as we know why. He has to keep kind of a lot of his opinions internally in his own mind. But he even said that her behavior was very notable in court this past week.
Notable.
Yeah, I'm putting that lightly. Yeah.
She was probably the biggest moment of the week for me. I mean, everyone should be ashamed if that's the best that the police that comes out of policing up there. I mean, the meme I was so proud to put together my first meme, and I put her and Nicholas Barros next to each other, juxtaposed them, and said something like he's the hero and she's a zero or something like that. But I don't remember, but it was something like that. And so blatantly obvious she was lying. I think I called her a coward, something like that. And these are my opinions.
Yeah.
But she had a choice to make, and she made the wrong choice. And I feel very strongly that you can have a lawyer, and by lawyer I mean the prosecutors, in your face, because Lally and McLaughlin, but Lally was also involved. They all knew about her for the first trial, and here she is for the second trial. They all knew about her. They all knew what she was going to say. And, look what happened. She gets on the stand and frankly, I think she perjured herself, and she should not rely upon what she thinks was the legal department at the Department of Justice, which is what represents the FBI. There's no way the feds are going to let a false memory go unaccounted for. So,
Man, I got a question.
Yeah.
I was kind of mulling this over after I had got it, to kind of think about this. Do you think that it was a strategy by Jackson to call her, and they kind of were tipped off as to how she was going to act on that stand?
Yes.
Do you think that they had any inkling about how she was going to act on that stand?
I do. And part of the reason I do is, and I always give credit where credit is due. Part of the reason I think that is because I was listening to Mark Betterow at some point over the last few days. I don't remember whose channel, but he said something like, and I thought this at the time too, they've known about her.
Yeah.
And they didn't call her. The Commonwealth did not call her for the first trial. So if you know about a witness who has already, and who's in law enforcement, and who already made a statement to the feds, right? So that her statement, whatever was reduced to writing, would have been in what was disclosed by the feds to both sides. But the Commonwealth knew about her and didn't call her for 1.0. And because of that, that signals to someone like me that the Commonwealth attorneys knew she was going to have to perjure herself. And you can't do that as an attorney. You cannot ethically and professionally put someone on the stand who's going to perjure themselves. You cannot suborn perjury. So I don't know if there was a tip-off, but it wouldn't take a very sophisticated attorney to know that, knowing what she told the feds, but not calling her, they had an inkling that she was probably going to be
resistant.
Yeah. And by the way, that's a great word. I've got I should mention it before I hand off to everyone else. I have my resist t-shirt on and I wore it specifically tonight for Mazza because it matches the colors of his logo.
Thank you.
But I also think it's a good theme, whether it's for Karen Read, whether it's for Sandra Birchmore, Just en Route, Enrique Delgado Garcia, all of the content creators, Karen herself, everybody. Just don't stand for anything less than what you are entitled to under the Constitution. Resist. Be brave and courageous enough to stand together and say, this is not good enough for us. We have questions. We want accountability. We want transparency. And that's why I wish, Mizzy, I could get to your potential standout on the 12th. I'm going to be up the following week. But by standing out peacefully, in any instance, among other overtures, you are resisting. You are telling your government and your officials, many of whom are elected or at least measured in terms of performance reviews, that you want to stand up and not settle for anything less. So keep resisting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everything that's gone on has been wild. I think with Kelly on the stand this week, it was someone for me that I didn't expect to be a witness that was going to be anything more than maybe questions and answers, and what it elaborate, what it turned into was something very hostile, quite a bit. And her behavior, I don't know why I'm here, blah blah blah. And then there's rumors about her potential tie-ins to other people from maybe even a bloodline perspective that's been rumored, or might even be confirmed. I don't know, but there's been a lot of things out there that have surfaced, and it's been very wild. It's been very insane. It just amazes me how many people, because people will say a lot like, well, there's no cover up, there's no frame job, it can't be possible that all these people were intertwined amongst themselves. But then you take someone that I've never really heard of her before, and then all of a sudden here she is in the stand, and we're all like anybody expecting not much to come from this, and then all of a sudden it's really, really hostile, and it's like, whoa, this is really intense. And you had Alan Jackson even going back and forth. It's nothing at all. You have no reason why you're here. You don't know any reason why you've been called or anything like that at all. And I have no clue. it was very much extremely notable. That is for sure. It was, I try to use that word to be a little bit more, I don't know what I want to say with it, just to be a little bit more toned down, but it was very, very much striking to me to see that behavior, the snap she had. And I thought that it was very much resemblant of Jen McCabe and very resemblant of Katie McLaughlin when they were on the stand. They had a lot of zip, crackle, and pop, snap, crackle, and pop when they were on the stand with Jackson or whomever, and it was pretty confrontational at times, quite honestly.
If I were a member of local law enforcement up there, and obviously they're aware of the picture that's been painted of local law enforcement. If I were called to that stand, like Kelly were, I would have had in the back of my mind, I'm in some way, shape, or form a representative of the Boston Police Department, of the Canton Police Department, and I would want to put a better foot forward. And she was just so evasive every step of the way. She was argumentative. She was very accusatory on the stand. I was very surprised to see that from her. And I've heard other people say, this could have been a little bit of the final stone thrown at her career in law enforcement, because who's going to want to call her back to the stand again after the way that she acted? I mean, not so much in her words, but your demeanor is just as important when you're testifying to a jury as your words. So she did not come across as credible. So will she be called to the stand again? How credible is she going to be viewed again by third parties? I was shocked to see that.
Excellent, Britt. Thank you so much. I was just counting the total here. We have already raised $750 towards this fundraiser already. Some big, the donations are coming in fast and furious here, and a lot of donations just kind of raise this thing. We were actually, when I was counting it, we were closing in on $500, and all of a sudden, just bing, bang, boom, there we were at $750. It was like, okay, wow, that's fantastic. So that's great news. I was, like I said, I ran a poll the other night what stood out to everybody more, Kelly Dever or versus Jackson, or Dr. Wolf versus Hank Brennan, and the Kelly Dever was soaring in the poll. I think it was like 81% of voters picked the Kelly Dever as the more notable one. I thought that was amazing. Mizzy, what were some of your thoughts on the whole Kelly Dever versus Alan Jackson direct examination, I should say?
Yeah, for me, she proves the corruption. She flat out proves that there's corruption within the police departments in Massachusetts. I can't talk today. She, by just her going into that office with the head of the Boston PD, the head guy, and he tells her, "Do the right thing, kid." Wink, wink. And she's like, "Okay, boss." A rookie would never, ever, ever be called into his office unless it was for doing something extraordinarily heroic, or she did something bad and he wanted to dress her down. She would never be called into his office for nothing. And it was to give that wink, wink, nod, nod, follow the blue line. Don't step over it. We got your back if you stick with us. And to me, she proved the corruption.
Agreed.
Might not prove the Canton and Massachusetts State Police, but it just shows how much corruption there can be in law enforcement and how much they stick together. And it also disgusts me because John is a Boston cop. They're all forgetting about that cop. They're all supposed to stick together, but John has been tossed aside by his people too. And that they should all be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah, the irony in that too, considering how his body was treated, beyond being beaten to death, they literally tossed him on the front lawn. And then in terms of any support for his cause, it's been, usually when a cop is murdered by a civilian, for example, it's all, the blue suits are out there. It's no different than the fire department. When a firefighter or two are killed, in the line of duty, the firefighters from all over the place, the engines from all over the place come out in support of that firefighter. And typically we've seen that in the world of policing as well, but there apparently has been what appears to be almost more than certainly a blue wall of silence that has come up from this. And I my personal take on Kelly was, I didn't think that she was someone with much of a hand in all of this. I just think that maybe she was someone that had the eyes or the, someone that maybe was, alert to a situation perhaps. And then, really had to kind of hold back on hers. And that's just been my perception of her through all this. Maybe it's a weaker take than maybe some others out there, but I thought that, she's someone that maybe saw a bit of it and wants to make sure she's kind of keeping it quiet just as much as anybody else. And it seemed to me that Alan Jackson, based on the way he was really, he was aggressive. I would say assertive, maybe even is a better word, in terms of the way he approached her. And even when she was giving her answers, he was countering everything very thoroughly. And again, we talked about moments ago on this show, Nan especially said this, her behavior is very much defensive. And when you are defensive, how is that seen? Are you seen as someone that is actually honest, or are you seen as someone that's got something to hide? And from what we saw, it was very, very hostile. Brian, did you want to jump in?
No, I was just going to say, I completely agree. And I just love the fact when Alan Jackson went, "Do you even want to be here today?" And that really set the tone. And I thought that was nice that he was touching on that body language to reiterate to the jury that we have a very resistant witness here that we called. And you can see everything that we've shown you before with all these law enforcement officers just reiterates, what their attitude and what their involvement has been in this case. And I thought it was a nice touch, and it probably hit the jury pretty hard when he said that, because it was like, whoa, wait a minute, this is your witness. And all of a sudden you're now turning around and asking your witness if you even want to testify today and be here. I thought that was a great hitting moment, and it really threw her off her game. And that's when she really got even more, resistant and, I would say probably
abrasive,
annoyed. Annoyed and throwing that blue wall up harder on the stand. So I thought that was a great, brilliant move by Jackson to point that out.
It absolutely was. And it again, it goes to show you that, like I said, there's a lot of people that don't believe more people know about this. They try to tell you like, he just got hit. John just got hit. He just got, Karen backed up in reverse and knocked his body on the ground and all these wounds happened. And I think that's why, I'll say this. I thought the defense did a great job last year. I felt personally that the defense did everything they needed to do to prove far beyond a reasonable doubt that Karen Read was innocent. We all know the story from what happened last year, but I will say this defense team has been far superior to last year. I think that they have, over the past year, learned a lot more information. And whether that's Robert or Leslie joining the team or not, besides giving them the extra boost, a significant addition, they just seem to have a lot more knowledge and a lot more resources. And again, you're looking at someone like Kelly Dever, who was mentioned, I believe it was by you, Brian, who was not called by the Commonwealth, or maybe Nan said she was not called by the Commonwealth last year.
Right.
Now in turn called by the defense. And I think it's important for the defense to call these particular witnesses, to get them before that jury and present them as, hey, look, this person's, we're because again, you're trying to prove reasonable doubt, but what is reasonable doubt rooted in? It's rooted in a cover up and a frame job. And when you're trying to prove that that's what this is, you need to have the witnesses on the stand that are gonna, whether you're calling them or not, that are gonna basically prove your point that, hey, look, there's something going on here, and there's a level of suspicion. And like I said, my biggest fear right now, and it should be everybody's fear, and I'm not trying to be scare tactics here, but God forbid the jury is not saying all this. But from what I've heard from Jess Machado on Brian's show recently, this jury seems to be pretty alert or alert enough. So I'm just hoping that they'll have, again, and I think it comes down to closing arguments too. Reasonable doubt, reasonable doubt, reasonable doubt. Say it 3 times in a row. Say it several times over during a closing arguments. That's what I'm hoping to see out of Alan Jackson. That's what that jury needs to realize. Is there reasonable doubt? You have the ARCCA reenactment, you have the Welcher Blue Band Group reenactment, and it's been, there's been a lot of blue. There's been, a blueberry reference from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. There's been the Blue Band Group reference, the Blue Wall of Silence. I mean, it's just everything. It's been wild here, but I am ready for this to end. But I am absolutely concerned that this is not going to end. Like I said, I don't think Karen's going to be convicted, but I am absolutely concerned right now that this is going to go on to a third trial, because I'm concerned, because like I said, last year, nobody, people were asking, everybody last year, like, what's next for all you guys after this case is over? And we're all like, well, we'll see. And then little did we know that, well, guess what? There was a lot more fundraisers to come. There was a lot more standouts to come. There was a lot more gatherings to come. And that, then we're here a year later, and here we are still talking about a second trial. And last year, God forbid that they do what they did last year, because they have those alternates. God forbid that they have people that are scouting them and poaching particular jurors to not be on that 12, and they're taking the people that are more on the fence. And then at the same time, what I'm really looking out for here is, what's this verdict slip going to look like this time? What's that verdict slip going to be like? That verdict slip was extremely confusing last year for all those jurors. And also, before jury deliberation really got too involved, Alan Jackson and all the defense attorneys were in that courtroom contesting that judge about it. And she said, quote unquote, "This is how we've always done it in Massachusetts." And David Yannetti quipped, "No, it's not." But my concern is, is this how things are always done in this judge's courtroom? And will this verdict slip be the same as last time? And if this jury happens to fall down the same pattern that the other jury did, which is getting stuck on count 2, does this now put this back in the hands of the judge to declare a mistrial? And with that said, I want to hear from Nan on this one.
Oh, wait, can I just pop in really quick before?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Nan. I just wanted to add, also, you just said we had a lot more information this time around. And what we actually found out today on my show with Ted was how involved Karen Read's private investigator has been. That blew me away, that he said he literally has been in Canton for like the last year and a half, tracking down so many new leads that have put them in such a better position and with more information this time around. And I was like, wow, I actually just learned something today. And I'm sorry, forgive me, I forgot his
No.
name, but I thought it was really good to hear that as well too.
Right. And I don't
Sorry,
want to
man.
call out this, I don't want to call out Sheila, but this is something that I have been contested with by many Karen Read supporters, and people say be positive. This is not a matter of positivity. And quite honestly, I could be as positive or as negative as I want, but that doesn't, it's like when you watch a sports game, there's superstition. If you sit there, your team might, well, realistically, what's going on when the Patriots are playing the Falcons, the Super Bowl has no bearing on what I think. It's just what's going to be happening in that courtroom. So regardless, I just, like I said, I have a relative level of concern, and I believe that my and many other people's concerns are justified and being on the alert for this. And I think that that's something that needs to be, we should all be alert. We should all be aware that this is something that could potentially happen again. We know the forces that we're up against, and we know that what they've proven that they've wanted to do. Like I said, we're back here a year later because of what they decided to do in the first trial. And we've seen what happened with the jurors that were, so like I said, I do believe in my heart that Karen will be acquitted. I don't know when, but I pray that it's in the coming week or two. I really do. And I'll defer to Nan now.
Oh yeah, she's gonna. I feel so strongly. I know there's law tubers, which I'm not one. I don't have a channel, but there are law tubers out there who have concerns about a higher likelihood or possibility of a mistrial here. I just don't see it. The way the evidence has been presented by both the Commonwealth and the defense, this rather creative approach, and I say creative not in a bad way, just a different way. The creative approach that the defense team has taken to defending this case. So the defense case has been more robust than it was for 1.0, which it should have been, and we all anticipated that it would be. And it's also different than a lot of people, including myself, have expected. There's people who are like, we think he should call Proctor. We think he should be calling Higgins, even possibly Brian Albert, because they are third-party culprits, the Albert and Higgins. There's people who have expected to see certain things, and the way reporting has come out, it doesn't appear that certain people we've expected to see are going to be called. And the strategic decision making that goes behind that it's unbelievable. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall with Karen and her team when they were going through the process of making the decisions as to who to call, who not to call, when to call them, who to close on, who to start with, whether they should call Kelly Dever, whether they should call Nicholas Barrows, all of these individuals. And like, for example, it doesn't look like they're going to call Richard Green. Everybody has kind of said, well, this is the 227 Google search that launched 1,000 ships. Why would we not call our expert? And I'm saying we, I mean, it's not me, it's not my team, but Team Karen Read. Why aren't we going to call Richard Green? He's the one who can debunk the 227 didn't happen theory, etc. So when we think about that, I have gone through that decision in my brain based on, I'm sure, the extremely limited information I have, and I understand why they might not call him. There's reasons like, okay, I didn't feel he was a strong witness. I don't think he commanded the courtroom for 1.0. Now, those are things that can improve. They can improve when a witness gets challenged and goes through cross-examination before. You can have a witness sharpen their elbows and get a little bit of an attitude. You saw that from Dr. Marie Russell, who we're definitely going to be talking about tonight, Mazza.
Oh, for sure.
I am not saying Richard Green would have made a bad witness in this trial, but there's many reasons why maybe he didn't need to be called. So Karen and her team, for example, probably said, well, do we need to take a burden upon ourselves? The burden always stays with the Commonwealth. Do we have to take the burden upon ourselves, as we did in trial 1.0, and try to say, nope, this search happened at 2:27 a.m. You are perceivably taking a burden of proof on at that point. So I think creatively, this outlay of a defense that Karen and her team have constructed, and it's just kind of laying out before everyone's eyes, I think it's genius. And for anyone who feels disappointed that they're not getting to see all of the witnesses they'd like to see, I would simply say, from someone who tries her very best to watch every moment of the trial, to analyze it, to stay up late and get up early and think about it, and sometimes to replay it, even to hit the book sometimes and some of the case law, I feel very strongly, plus also having laid eyes on the jury and listening to some of the reporting coming out as to jury perception of evidence, I think she's going to get acquitted. I feel very strongly about it.
That's great to hear, Dan. And last year's jury was clear on counts 1 and 3.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question: count 2, which has something a little bit to do with alcohol.
Lesser included too. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? Let me ask you this question. This is a constructive question for you to tell us your thoughts on Karen Read's defense team in comparison to last year's trial. Do you feel that Karen Read's defense team, up until this point, with not all witnesses yet called, have made a better case for count 2 to be clearer for that jury to deliberate than they did a year ago?
That's a great question. And that reminds me, I kind of forgot that you originally asked me about the charges before I went on a tangent. I do think in this trial, Karen's team has put on a better defense of all of the charges, including the second count, which was the major hiccup, apparently, for the first jury. So think about witnesses like, all right, who do we got? We've got witnesses who have been called or cross-examined. So they've cross-examined Buchanan, they've cross-examined Jen McCabe, they've called on their defense case Karina Kolakithis. Karina was there. She saw how, maybe not drink by drink, but she saw Karen, her condition, her manner of speech, her composure, the way she was comporting herself at the waterfall. So she definitely would be able to, and I think she did, provide testimony that kind of dispels any notion, at least visually speaking, that Karen was somehow compromised when operating her vehicle.
Yes, she did, Nan, say, just to kind of confirm,
thank you, Britt.
She said that she wasn't concerned about Karen, not in these words, but getting behind the wheel. She basically said that her faculties were all there.
Yeah, thank you, Britt, because she was faced, and she said we were face to face. We were talking. Plus, Karina Kolakithis is a pharmacist. Pharmacists, I know because I represent a lot of them. Pharmacists have a special knack for having an understanding of what substances cause different reactions in the body. Does that mean she was Karina Kolakithis was a living, breathing alcohol breathalyzer test? No, but she knew Karen. It wasn't the first night she met Karen. She actually had a relationship of sorts with Jen McCabe. She was face to face with Karen, and in no way, shape, or form felt, as Britt was saying, that Karen posed a risk to herself or others. Right. So in looking at how witnesses were cross-examined, and anyone else can feel free to shout out other names because, my memory fades after a long day of travel. I will tell you that this time around, the defense team they've kind of proactively answered questions before they were ever asked by the jury.
Yeah.
I think somebody on, and maybe more than one, somebody from Team Karen Read Defense sat in a room, and it was probably multiple strategic conversations. Remember how kind of we were all getting a little antsy from July until then it was ticking over to January, and then are we going to start trial in January? And then it moved to April. Mm-hmm. There was so much strategizing going on, I'm sure. And someone on that team, or multiple meetings took place where they all said, how can we proactively answer the questions the jury would have as it relates to the charge that they all got caught up on? Because that first jury, Mazza was saying, well, at least through Ronnie, was saying things like, well, you know, there was a body on the lawn. She had been drinking. Her car had been there. What an awful measurement to try to consider to convict someone for murder. So they really did go through and get ahead of jury questions. I also think possibly, and I'm speculating, that Victoria George, the former alternate juror, probably played a pivotal role in giving the team some of her insights as to what was discussed at the jury table and why they were kicking around the second charge. But I think they've covered it all. I don't see that the second count is going to be an issue here.
That's good. That's the most important.
You don't think that they listen to some of these shows too? I'm sure they probably did, you know, like the things
Oh,
that we've
yes.
talked about. I mean, the things that we've talked about, everything that's been on Twitter or Facebook, we probably looked at a lot of those questions and said, hey, that's not a bad idea to talk about that stuff. I mean,
I
your
agree.
public is your biggest jury. So, I mean, if people are out in the public talking about this, look at the subjects that they're talking about or particular pieces of the case. You know, look at all the stuff that Aiden has reported on and talked about. You know, I mean, he brought up millions of good points in this, as well as everybody on all their respective shows and social media platforms. So that gives you a good temperature as well as how people are leaning with certain things that you might have to focus on in a trial.
I agree. I would just make one other point, Brian and Mazza, on this. So to be a juror, you can have familiarity with this case. You just have to be able to set aside your biases honestly and ethically and say, I can keep an open mind. So there is a possibility that jurors had delved into the channels.
No, I'm saying, I'm sorry, Nan, to clarify that. I'm saying the defense team.
I know. I was with you. I'm sure the defense team 100% was like, I want to. That's why they all, from what I can tell, when you all cross paths with the defense team, like they love the content creators. They love the Free Karen Read supporters and boots on the ground. They're so appreciative. They've said it. I know the Read family has at least mentioned that to me, that how appreciative they are of the supporters and content creators, but even the jurors themselves. Yeah. And the jurors now may have had exposure to some of the non-mainstream media coverage that's out there. As long as they can be impartial, which I hope they can. This is a very, very young jury, which younger jurors are more inclined to kind of veer away from mainstream media and find their information sources in more unconventional places.
Yeah, that's a huge point right there. Yeah, it's a huge point right there. And that's what I'm looking for is, like, for me, like, this whole thing has just been about the end result. And I think the problem that Karen Read and her defense team ran into last year was that verdict slip, which was immediately contended. And with that, when they, you know, because what should have happened in a regular courtroom in the United States of America, just to make sure we all know what country we're in, right? Because sometimes it doesn't feel like it when you see what is happening to Karen Read. It is counts 1 and counts 3 should have never been on the board for the second trial. Those should have been gone. And if that jury was rightfully hung on the second count, then this trial, rightfully so, should have only been for this. And I'm still shocked to this day that the appellate court, the Supreme Court of Massachusetts, shot down the defense when they brought this to their attention. But it's like, you know, like my dad used to tell me, I was playing basketball. We had lost a close game. We felt like the referees cost us. And my dad said, you know, the best way to keep the referees out of the game and from costing you the game is beat your opponent so badly that there's no chance that the referees can do anything to affect the outcome. And I think when you look at the defense team, when they're doing their due diligence in court, it's to make sure that they are presenting that case, which like I said, they already did that in the first trial. For whatever reason, that jury got stuck on it. I don't know why, but at this point, like you said, they've refined their game. And I would add that I think that testimony you referenced moments ago about Karina, we absolutely adore this woman. She seems like the most lovely person, by the way. She, you know, that needs to be referenced. I'd like to see that reference in the closing argument. Like I said, I'm not an attorney. I'm not an expert. Alan Jackson knows what to do and doesn't need any of my advice, but still, that's something I think should be reiterated, because like you said, when I asked you about count 2,
Yeah.
man, that's one thing in terms of testimony that you referenced as being a grounds for why she should be not guilty on count 2 specifically. And
Yes.
I'm hoping and praying that that defense team will reference that in there and say, as it pertains to whatever this particular reason, alcohol level, we have sworn testimony from Karina, who said X, Y, and Z about Karen, proving that, and that, I think that's it, because if Judge Canoni gets a verdict slip that's just not guilty across the board, then there's no way she can declare a mistrial for other counts, which is what she did, which we all thought was a total farce last year. Was what do you mean? They said not guilty on 1, not guilty on 3, and because it's not, hung up on count 2, well, it's just as clear a mistrial on all 3 counts, which was ridiculous. But this time around, if they send in a verdict slip that's just not guilty across all 3 counts, well, then it's game over. There's nothing she can do. At least I hope.
Yeah.
That she cannot.
And they're going to put together a very, it's going to have to be short, but they're going to put together a very powerful closing argument.
Yeah.
Judge Canoni, in her infinite tyrannical approach, has limited them again to an hour. That's not a lot of time, but it's now going to be just, you're coming at the issues from a different approach as to each of the charges. And the defense team knows that the second charge with its lesser included was a real problem. By the way, someone had put in your chat that Victoria George, the former dismissed alternate juror, wasn't in the deliberation room. That's absolutely true. If I said that, I apologize. I've been up since very early in the morning. But what she, as a former juror, before she was dismissed, would have seen, because this is the way it always works. Jurors aren't allowed to talk about the case, right? They can't until deliberations start. But jurors spend all day together. They see what the body language is and who's noting what, and maybe there's a glance here, there's a glance there, what's important to the others. You tend to get to grasp a vibe as to who's picking up what's being put down and what is being put down that needs to be picked up. So she's probably been a very vital resource to them.
Yeah.
But I know the defense team would have gone in with the approach of how can we protect ourselves with a properly drafted and recrafted jury slip so that this doesn't happen again. And honestly, I hope Judge Bev understands, like, she can't just brush this off and say, well, this is the way we always do it in Massachusetts. Well, it didn't work last time. So it needs to be revised.
What about selecting the 12 jurors? I mean, like that was something that, like we've seen the randomizer as it pertains to the media journalists this year. And quite frankly, that seemed to be certainly up till we got more vocal about it online. Definitely weighed against independent journalists like Aidan Carney and Jess Machado, who are pro Karen Read independent journalists, and weighed favorably towards selecting pro anti Karen Read individuals, such as people that will not be named, but everyone knows the 2 individuals. How can we be confident in terms of a lottery selection, for example, as we saw last year, which ruled out jurors that were like Victoria George, for example, who were more, obviously pro Karen Read jurors from being a member of those 12. What do you foresee in terms of the defense's ability to be more, or would they have a level of involvement that they could enforce on that? I've heard rumors that they could kind of be more involved in that selection process and make it maybe less random. What do you know about that?
Yeah, so the way, and I'm sure you all know this, like the way it's supposed to work with the selection of the 12, I call them the bingo balls. Each jurisdiction calls them something different, but the bingo ball process is supposed to be as transparent as possible.
Yeah.
I've been in different courts where they have different methods of using the selection process, but let's assume that it's going to be the rolling cage and the balls are picked and there we go. We pick our jurors. But my understanding is, from what I have been advised, there has been a request that has been made to the judge to witness the selection of the bingo balls. So there's full transparency. No, I don't think that's been filed. Meaning it's not on the public docket, but I know there, from what I've been told, there's been a request for that, and she has not made a decision yet. Honestly, it's the most reasonable request in the world. We want to see it.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, is that it needs to be done. Mizzy, and I'll get to you in just a moment too. That's one thing that I'm concerned about, is the transparency of all this, because you just can't take. It's like the NBA lottery. Most people like myself have seen teams that have lost key players in the NBA, like LeBron left Cleveland. The next thing you knew, the Cleveland Cavaliers got the #1 pick, and it just happened again a couple of weeks ago in the NBA, where a team that lost Luka Doncic to the Lakers, the Mavericks, ended up winning the NBA draft lottery. And a lot of us, like myself out there, just think that these NBA draft lotteries have been really rigged by the NBA. And I see in a set of circumstances here where if this lottery is not done before the defense, and I have no objection, of course, to the prosecution witnessing that either. I think it should be more transparent, or it should be done before Karen Read and her defense team, the prosecution, of course, and then all the members of the courtroom that sit up front. It should be transparent for everybody. Not let's go in the back with the bingo balls or the lottery balls and make the thing pop like popcorn. And guess what? Victoria George hasn't been selected because we knew that she was a pro Karen Read juror. And we don't want to help Karen out too much. So that's, like I said, I want to see that level of transparency this time around. And because and I know the defense is on top of us. I don't doubt them at all. But I think these are things that are going to go a long way in ensuring that Karen Read's acquitted, because we all know if Victoria George had been one of those 12 and one of those jurors that maybe were either less educated, less knowledgeable, less discerning, or maybe even anti-Karen Read to a degree, are done out of there, then, you have people that have more of an assertive belief. Well, if she's not guilty on counts 1 and 3, then by rule she should be not guilty on 2, and that's what we need to see. And I'm sure that the defense is more on, more aware of it this time as well, because no one could have foreseen that the jury selection process would have gone down that way in hindsight.
Well, and Mazza, I'm sorry, man.
Hey, Britt.
Someone mentioned this in your chat earlier, and it already scrolled up, but I wanted to make sure this was touched on if I didn't miss it when I was getting my my drink. But in the Ingolf Turk trial, which was a room or two over from where Karen Read's trial is being held, there was more transparency. When they rolled the bingo balls, they held the numbers up for all to see, and then read those aloud. So I mean, it's so interesting to me that it's so easy to make it to where they can remain above reproach, but they didn't. But they certainly can.
Right. And Alan Jackson, with his interview with Ted Daniel, Brian, I had Ted Daniel on this afternoon, as we know, and Brian mentioned how great of an interview it was, and it was. Ted had mentioned, talked to Alan Jackson, and Alan Jackson said we had a few people that were jurors that we kind of looked at and said, hey, these are going to be definitely our kind of, people are going to be seeing it our way and seeing, they're getting what we're presenting in court. And he says of those particular people, those 3 all didn't make that 12-person cut last year. And that was just a massive problem for all of us. It really was, Britt.
What a red flag.
Perfect. Mizzy.
To stack on top of the rest.
Sorry. Ms. Sorry. Thank you so much. Mizzy, I just wanted to get you back in the conversation of what we've talked about the last couple minutes here. What are some of the things that have stood out to you the most and have been either your biggest thoughts, concerns, or even questions for Nan? Nan, who's here, our in-house attorney for the show tonight. Thank you, Nan.
One of my biggest concerns is just we don't know how Judge Canoni is going to react, how she's going to act. I mean, look, she's been so outrageous throughout this whole trial. And she's the X factor. We don't know that, like we what has already been touched upon, the verdict slips, just how she called the mistrial, without giving the before dismissing the jury, she didn't even give like a second delay for the defense to say, hey, can we poll the jury? And those are things that I mean, I feel like that, you know, AJ needs to be standing there at his desk, like ready to jump up and say, we want to pull the jury before she even finishes her words.
That's
Yeah.
huge. That's huge.
Yeah, because she holds so much of the power, and we just don't know what she's gonna do. And like I said, her attitude, this whole season's been horrible.
Just to add to that, Mizzy, in talking about Bev, you know, you just have to think about it like, how would this trial be if we just had a completely different judge on it?
Yeah.
You know, like not her. You know what I mean? Like, you just look at like how some of these other high profile cases have come across our spectrum. Like I used the Koberger case just with, you know, you had Judge, and then it changed over another judge, Hepler. And he's just so fair and right down the middle. And he's not taking shit from like, you know, all this shit that people are trying to bring in. He's just straight down the middle. Like, this is the way that it's going to be. This is the way that's going to happen. And he lets like both sides talk. It doesn't cut them down. There would be a trial.
Mark Cunningham goes, there wouldn't be a trial. That's a great, I mean, that's probably the ultimate point, right?
We're in Norfolk County, so.
Right. Yeah. Well, oh my goodness.
It would be just so different. Like even the judges, like we've seen in Aiden's case, you know, the last judge that he had, and forgive me, I don't know all these judges' names.
That's okay.
But, you know, how fair he was to listening to arguments, you know, from Aiden's defense.
Oh,
you know,
Doolin.
Bradel, you know, and listening to Bradel and actually listening and going, no, well, this is the law and this is how we're going to apply it, instead of, you know, the shit that we see with Bev. But anyway, Mizzy, I'm so sorry to cut you off.
We were talking about, Nan, the judge that Brennan tried to pull those shenanigans on when he had Aiden in there. That judge, I mean, he kind of ruled partly in their favor and partly not. But like even that judge was more fair. I mean, because at first he was like, you know, what are you guys doing in there? And he said, no, actually, you know, I'll hear from you. You know, Bev would have been like, no, get out of my courtroom. You know, and she wouldn't. It's just every other judge we've seen along the way in different cases that, you know, surround Karen's case have been so much more fair. There's the judge that I happened to be in town that day when Jill Daniels was in court in Stoughton for when she assaulted Aiden, and that judge was amazing. And I was like, why can't we have this judge? He was so straight down the played it straight and narrow. I mean, like her lawyer tried to say this wasn't assault because of who he is, basically. And the judge was like, basically laughed at him and said, no, he was assaulted. And so if we had more of a fair judge, even if this trial had gone to court, if we had a more fair judge, it would be such a different trial.
Yeah. And she was supposed to be gone from this. That was the big rumor that ended up coming out, that she was supposed to be gone from the second trial because of some kind of rotational rule. And then somehow she enacted herself to be back in. Brian, you might have the more information than I. If you want to jump, go ahead, sir.
Oh, no, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
What's that, Mizzy?
It's the second time she did that. She did it in the first one and this one.
She did. Microdots did an entire show on I think the title of it, if I remember correctly, is Bev's Got Your Back.
Oh,
and
yes.
She was supposed to have been rotated before the first proceeding. And she found a way to park her behind on that bench. And then for the second one, turn it into a permanent setting to where she no longer can be rotated.
Yeah.
If I can just speak to that for one moment, because yes, I think she parked her behind right where she needed to be. This was, complete interference with a purpose. I believe in the corruption. I didn't start there, but I'm there now. However, between the first trial and the second trial, just so everyone understands, that would have been a very natural decision for the same judge for 1.0 to be the same judge for 2.0. That happens all the time. But it's the shenanigans that went on to get her situated in place for trial 1.0. And then you throw on the added layer of when Karen's team challenged her impartiality. Okay, like Auntie Bev and, you know, Bev's cottage and this person knew that person. If there was any appearance of impropriety, she should have recused herself right away. She instead went to her chambers for a brief time and came out and said, no, I don't have a problem. That's not generally how it works. So even if she didn't know the certain individuals or have the certain connections that she was being accused of having back at the time those accusations were made, when a request for her to recuse herself was made, most judges and the canons of the judiciary will mandate that even if there is no conflict, to avoid an appearance of impropriety or inappropriateness, judges should recuse themselves.
Yeah.
So she put herself right in the position she needed to be. It reminds me a little bit of the show Your Honor that aired on Showtime. I think there might have been 2 seasons. It was with Bryan Cranston. I saw the first season, which, you know, he was a judge and he put himself in the right position to kind of manipulate something, to manipulate an outcome. And I think that has happened here. And you see it as most recently as Friday. I've lost track of a few days, but Friday, look at the number of objections that were made and ruled upon in a manner that was adverse to the defense the other day.
49.
Yeah. You know, and I kind of at some point took a nap during the middle of some of the questioning of Wolf, because I was beat, and I woke up and I was like, what the heck has happened here? Because some people were buzzing about concerns. I'm sure we're going to talk about that, Mazza, but I kind of replayed it. I'm like, I have no concerns. But what I do have a concern about is that Judge Bev she calls every single objection in favor of the Commonwealth. It's ridiculous.
I got 2 points I want to add here. Steph has a great quote that she put in there. It says, I can't wait for Welcher to rebuke ARCCA's testing. It's going to be such a joke. I completely agree, because it's like third grade testing versus like supreme entity testing. And what Welcher did is like paper mache compared to ARCCA. And oh, damn it, I just lost my other thought. Damn it. It'll come back to me.
At least you got one of the two.
I had said on Twitter,
what were we gonna
Brian, that I hope that Dr. Rentschler stays very safe this weekend, because, you know, Wolf, as much as his testimony mattered and answered a lot of our questions, I believe there are still a lot of questions to be answered for the jury this upcoming week, and it has to be through Rentschler. Rentschler is going to be that final nail in the coffin for the Commonwealth, because Wolf was not able to speak to the injuries of Officer O'Keefe. Wolf was not able to speak to the fact that, you know, Rescue Randy's arm would have been obliterated, and so would John O'Keefe's. So Rentschler is going to be the one to answer all those questions for the jury Monday, Tuesday, and I think that the Commonwealth's case is going to be over after he testifies.
Yeah, that's a great point, because even some of the questions that Dr. Wolf was asked, he had to defer to Dr. Rentschler as well, because he can't answer
him. I'm talking
to you.
Right. I'm not talking
Every
I'm talking
time.
to you.
Randy right now.
I'm talking to you.
Exactly.
We'll get to him, but I'm talking to you.
He's such a creep.
Yeah. Maz, if you want to share my screen really quick, this is my point that I wanted to bring up. There was a lot of talk about the recreation, and this is what I want people to understand about this, because a lot of people got so mad at the defense. Oh, you proved the Commonwealth's theory. No, they really didn't, and this is why. And I was talking about this in the interview with Ted this afternoon, and he was a little confused. He thought I was talking about the top visor on the back, but anyway, my point in this is, what they proved at 29 miles an hour, if the hand is in the position that the Commonwealth thinks, okay, and you look at that tail light on the left, okay, my point is in all of this is on the left, you look at that long piece of lens, and that is where the brunt of the impact of what happened in this experiment, and it only clipped off that top side of the tail light. But then you have to look at the tail light that's in the Sally port that was taken out. This is the picture on the right. So if you perform that experiment probably 10 times, 9 out of the 10, it's probably going to end up like this, or I would even say 10 out of 10, it's going to end up like this. And that's, the bigger point of what I'm trying to say in all of this. It didn't really prove the Commonwealth theory at all, because again, it goes back to, it shattered that long lens where it took the actual hit. And probably from that splitting, the inertia of that probably blew into that piece of the tail light, but it did not end up the way it was in the subject tail light. So
yeah, the inner damage of the subject tail light is far more. There's a lot more that went on in there, in terms of
the diffuser
level of damage.
cracked was cracked in Karen's, but the vehicle test, it was not, and that's big. That means that someone took something to that and manipulated that tail light.
I was
Did
shocked.
any of you, there was a study done prior to Trial 2.0, done by David McIntyre, and he, spoke a lot with Toyota Lexus. He purchased at least 2, if I'm recalling correctly, LX 570 taillights, and the conclusions he reached, and I know that he said that he sent it to both the Commonwealth and the defense as well, but his conclusion was that in order for that taillight to have both the outer lens, which, side note, I thought it was very powerful for Wolf to have pulled out that huge taillight and show just how difficult it would have
and
been.
Get it in the jury's hands, Britt, because now that's in evidence. And I talked about this on my show the other night. Now that's in evidence. They can hold it. They can feel it. They can see the thickness of that lens and whatever it may be. Now this thing's going to be in the jury's hands. And I love that idea by Jackson.
Yes, that was genius.
Yep.
And, the brilliant part to me of McIntyre's study was that in order to completely obliterate those diffusers on the inside and to do it in the place where it was obliterated, which was around the corner, it wasn't just on the flat portion, it was all the way around the corner like this. He said that it had to have taken multiple blows. So
I agree.
I found that to be interesting. I hope that it at least was submitted. Doubtful that Bev would allow it in, but McIntyre did say in that study that it needed some kind of a tool, because there was metal exposed as well, so it went through double layer, and it would have needed multiple blows in the placement and through both layers of the polycarbonate to have been broken like that.
Right. And I was actually shocked that the taillight in the ARCCA reenactment had broken. I think someone said maybe that taillight they used wasn't polycarbonate, but either way, I was still kind of, stunned by that. And for me, this afternoon, I was kind of I kind of had to finish the last hour this afternoon, and I noticed that there were tears in the sleeve, and I was already putting out posts saying like there was no tears, and I was like, well, wait a second, I got confused for a minute, and I realized, wait a second, the holes that were in the ARCCA left sleeve were on the left arm, not the right arm, so they had no holes in the right arm sleeve, but then additionally there was holes in the left arm, and even if it had been the right arm anyways, it wouldn't have matched whatever taillight patterns they had. And additionally, if the ARCCA example would have had tears in the left arm, then why didn't John's shirt have tears in the left arm too? And then additionally, what about the road rash that they determined would have been on John's face?
What about the Commonwealth trying to change their theory halfway through, going, what did Brennan say? Oh, what? You don't think that sliding across the cold hard ground wouldn't cause holes in his sweatshirt. So now they're changing that theory.
Yeah.
So because the tail light is not, it's not adding up. So now when they talked about John, you know, essentially hitting the ground and sliding across, and he tried putting the brilliant scientific statement of cold hard ground in there. But he asked Wolf about that. Oh, you don't think that would cause that? And I'm like, are they changing their theory again in mid trial?
I think that has to do with, you know, we've all had in our heads, you know, tried to picture that if Karen did this, how would it happen? And by seeing how the taillight flew through the air, it flew in different, it wasn't like it came off and flew, you know, like in a motion to make it went all different directions. So like as you're watching it, you're like, there's no way. And he tried to say, well, if he was a real person, you know, the plastic would have traveled with him. Even if it traveled with him a little bit, it would have fallen closer to his feet than sprinkled all around him. And just the fact that, like I said, that image of when it's slow-mo, or you just see the photographs, you're like, wait a minute, there is absolutely no way that his marks on, because the cuts on his arm are uniform.
Right.
Right. Pattern based. Yes.
Flying off, or the plastic, I should say, was flying off.
And that's again to speak to the gravity that Rentschler is going to have on the defense's case in chief. What I believe is going to come out of his mouth tomorrow or Tuesday is, if Officer O'Keefe had, you know, enough force to cause those, whatever we're going to call them, lacerations, abrasions to his arm, then he would have had to have been hit with enough force to also cause bruising and fractures. So, you know, that's going to be what I think is case in point for the jury.
And I think him and the pathologist are just going to meld hand in hand, and be perfect, you know, bookends to the end of the defense's case.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of how Brennan has conducted himself in Cross? Because I think a lot of us had been thinking, oh, there's no way he'll behave like a petulant child.
Are you finished?
Are you finished? Are you finished?
Are you finished yet? You all set?
Are you done?
Are you done?
You finished?
You know,
over here.
Nan perked right up. Nan perked right up when that question was asked, Britt.
Yeah, I wanted to mention this, and the panel was talking, and I love listening to you all, but the minute Britt mentions, like, how's he doing on Cross, I feel like it's important to just remind everyone that sometimes it's not even the substantive testimony that comes out in a trial that makes a difference or an impact on a jury. Jurors are very perceptible. They will look and they will make almost the most arbitrary decisions and verdicts based on how they like the attorneys. And I think in the most objective way possible, this is my opinion and not that of the show, I think Brennan is a complete asshole. And it is coming across that way. It's coming through the television, the phone, the laptops. Think of where you're streaming it. Brian, please don't do his voice. I'm going to be traumatized for the rest of the... No, you can. You have a skill.
I can't even quote him without doing the voice tonight.
No, it makes me laugh every time. It's like a Pavlovian dog response. The minute he does it, I start giggling.
Over here.
But,
I co-sign that. He is an asshole.
But yeah, that's right, Mizzy. And like, honestly, the over here, and don't look at him. And, you know, did that question bother you?
Because he knows he's losing. That's
correct.
The problem. And the thing is, Nan, he got he tried to rattle Wolf with bringing his wife into it.
Yep.
He went, my wife? Like, what are you talking about my wife for? That was me. Yeah,
I know.
The thing is, he knew he wasn't getting the reaction he wanted out of Wolf, and it wasn't working. So he had to go to these slimy, swarmy tactics of this rudeness. I'm gonna tell you right now, if I was a juror, that's not playing well with me.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Certainly
Mhm.
not. I mean, and I even saw him try at the beginning of the week with Dr. Russell to use a little bit of restraint.
Yes.
He even apologized to Dr. Russell on the first day of her cross-examination. He said something to the effect of, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be sharp with you." And then he moved along. But then, not even 5 minutes into the second day of cross-examination, he asks the most ageist, repulsive questions about whether she has memory problems.
Did it with Lucky too.
Yeah, she gasped.
Yeah.
Like he did it with
She
Lucky, like
gasped.
he was trying to put him down on this inferior level. Like, do you have
I-
problems with your memory? Like,
Yeah.
why are you trying to make a statement because of like he's a guy's guy and
Well,
you know
and
drives
even
the truck? And I'm telling you, truck drivers are
Mhm.
some of the smartest people I've ever talked to. You want to talk about the road? Go talk to my dad. My dad would tell
Yeah.
you he was in the union for almost 50 years. And
Lucky
drove.
pushing back on him was delicious.
It was
yes,
great.
It was delicious.
Lucky was battling back. He's like,
It was
Oh,
really
yeah.
good.
He
Yeah.
was like,
And
"No,
Dr.
you are not
Russell,
shaking
you-
me. I know what I know. I saw
Yeah.
what I saw."
I told the truth.
Yeah.
yeah. And the thing is, when
and God forbid animals. That
Yeah.
was the best quote. I love that quote.
and he said, yeah, he
You know, I
said
was
it
like,
this
"Who's
time
gonna say
too.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about observing juries to me is that they look to the attorneys as how are they authentically being?
Mhm.
So, for example, Brennan is being nice with some witnesses and a complete jerk with others. And it's and you know, it's one thing to give a rigorous cross-examination. That I would expect, I would imagine a jury would expect that too. But when an attorney crosses lines of professionalism and then becomes rude and gaslights witnesses and insults Dr. Marie Russell, and
Yeah.
from what I recall, Brian, Jess Machado heard Dr. Russell gasp in the
Yeah, that
courtroom.
audible
That
gasp.
like we all
Yeah.
heard it because she was mic'd up,
Yeah.
but you could hear it across that courtroom. The jurors see that. They see that like is he really a jerk, which he is, by the way. Let me dispel any misconception there.
You're
Is
finished.
he really a
Done.
jerk, or is he being fake when he's trying to be nice to some of these witnesses? So I think with a younger demographic in a jury, they're not, they have a good bullshit detector, and younger jurors, from my experience with them, they just make decisions based on how people act, what they say. They do it at a faster rate. It has a lot to do with social media, computers, the McDonaldization of how they process information. The pandemic actually compounded that, because when we were all shut down, everyone and their mother started spending even more time with a tablet and a phone in their hands. So people are making judgment calls very, very rapidly. And I don't think there's any way to measure Brennan as a skilled attorney. I don't see it. And I certainly don't see him as a nice person. He comes across as a complete asshole. So, I think that there is a high likelihood, no matter what substantive testimony is coming out, which I have no worries about what had come out with Dr. Wolf through cross-examination by Brennan, but by no means is there anything to worry about other than the fact that Brennan just keeps making the jury hate him more and more.
Yeah. And you know what? I think the jury would have thought the same thing had Jackson not made the decision to not cross Peggy O'Keefe. Peggy O'Keefe got on the stand, and we have a complete polarized comparison here, because Jackson stood up and he said, "Mrs. O'Keefe, we're very sorry for your loss. We're very sorry for the trauma that you've been through. I hope you have a nice day." And that was it. But the jury, had Jackson gone deeply into a cross, or had been even an iota as disrespectful as Hank has been with some of these witnesses, the jury would have thought the exact same thing.
Right. And I think that too, to that point, I was very well said, Britt. That was a great callback to what had happened. And I think that was a pivotal moment for the defense to do two things. Number one, not cross examine her, because it would have come, I think it was basically bait by the Commonwealth prosecution to try to get the defense to kind of goad them into, go ahead and cross examine her and make themselves look bad. But they didn't fall for the cheese and the trap. And beyond that, and to your point that you referenced and quoted just a moment ago, Britt, what I also liked about what Alan Jackson did was he didn't just say, I have no questions for you. He used it as an opportunity to not only not fall for the cheese and the trap, but to basically do everything but present roses, and say, I'm very sorry for your loss. Go ahead, Brian.
And I was going to say, thank you. You're just going to cut on that. When he said, I'm so very sorry for your loss. And Peggy O'Keefe goes, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, how well did that play to the jury?
Yeah.
How
Right.
well did that play to the jury?
Right.
Yeah.
Good point,
He could
Mazza.
not have
Great
used
point.
the floor. Yeah. Jackson could not have used the floor that he had any better.
Yeah.
That little bit of spotlight that he got, because, remember, he probably isn't speaking directly to Peg O'Keefe much, if at all, for any reason. But yeah, having that audience, having that moment, and then yes, Brian, her response to it was, I would not call it classy, just to say, but I just love how Jackson played that. And like you said, Mazza, to not just say that he's choosing not to cross, to actually address her like that with that level of respect, it humanized not just Karen, but it humanized the defense attorneys themselves as well, in my opinion.
Correct. 100%, 100,000% accurate. I agree with that so much. It
Before
was
we
unbelievably
move
well
on,
done.
I have to get going.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I wasn't originally supposed to be here. I'm filling in for somebody. I'm so glad I was on. Thank you, Mazza, for allowing me to take Deanna's place. It's been an honor to be on with all of you. I'll see you tomorrow, Britt. Nan will
See
talk.
you tomorrow,
Brian,
girl.
we touch base every once in a while anyway. Mazza, this is like my third or fourth time being on your show. Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Raising money for Karen, it's always great to do that, and it's an honor for me to just help. I get to go on other people's shows and talk about Sandra, and we do talk about Karen, and that's how I've been able to advocate for her the most that I've done. But I've become more vocal when it comes to Karen, and her family has been amazing and embraced me. And if you guys can donate tonight, please donate, because Karen still does need help. Again, Thursday we have a standout 2 to 4 at Michael Morrissey's office, but please make sure you check social media before you go, because we might have to change things. Thank you, guys. Thank you for all the love. You guys.
Bye, Mizzy. Let's get in touch, okay? Bye.
Yes, definitely. I'll reach out. Bye, guys.
Bye, Mizzy. Thank you for coming on the show. The chat loves you, and have a great evening. And we'll see her on Britt Happens tomorrow night with Britt, who is on the panel right now, and she'll have a big show tomorrow night as well. So we'll look forward to that show by Britt. And it's good to have Mizzy on as always. We are nearing. We just crossed the $5,200 mark. We're at $5,219 right now. This has been incredible. This is now the highest total fundraising total we've ever had on this program. And there were a lot of naysayers about why the Karen Read movement is still raising money for Karen, because, this is not two trials is not inexpensive, for one, and number two, like I said, God forbid this thing goes to a third trial. But I think I feel a lot more reassured after talking with Nan on this program and getting a lot more of Nan's insight, not only from being an attorney, but also having been in the courtroom. And then also I thought when she referenced Karina's testimony, that really to me was huge as well. So I feel a lot better about it, but I still am, I wouldn't say nervous. I'm just very cautious. I'm protecting my own mind from a worst case scenario, and also never underestimating what these people are going to do. But like I said, I share with Nan's belief that this is going to have a positive result for Karen Read, and she can start to take the next steps in her life, which is going to be basically going on the offensive a little bit.
I think, Maz, I think a lot of it too, and I referenced this on my show earlier. I mean, well over $1 million in donations out of people's pockets. That's very, very impressive.
Yeah.
But also speaks to the point of how many people around the world believe that Karen Read is innocent. I mean, if you didn't believe that, then people would not be donating. I mean, you give me one function that we've heard of in the last year where people would, a single person would raise $1 million for the defense. I mean, that's through public donations. It's insane.
Right.
It's
It
such an
is.
insane amount of money, and it's such a great standpoint to the love around the world that people have heard this story, listened to all these different channels, Aiden's reporting, what they've gotten from the mainstream media and all their social media platforms, and formulated their opinion about this, and to come in and help out financially. And even just I think the minimum is a $3 donation. Even if you're watching this show today and you can make a $3 donation, that $3 can go a long way in fighting back the corruption here in Norfolk County. So.
Right, exactly. And it helps the defense team as well. Even if it's something as simple as helping provide food for the defense team when they have their lunch. A lot of times funds are needed to go out and get food for them. So when they have that lunch break, they can sit down and have a little something to eat and then get right back in there for the second half of the day. And then witnesses, flying out witnesses. We know that a lot of witnesses have had to come out more than once, such as Dr. Marie Russell and Dr. Wolf, and I believe Dr. Rentschler as well, for voir dire, had to come out a few times. So this is definitely a huge contribution, not only to help her pay for legal fees, but just also the other things like, again, experts, lunches, things like that. I know it goes a long way, which is huge. And like I said, there's been a lot of criticism about Karen. There's a upcoming fundraising event coming up later in June, I heard about, and that was kind of being dispelled by anti-Karen Read folks that disagreed with it and just said, look, this is all a grift to help Karen make money. But again, this is to cover her legal expenses and everything else as well, and just help her get to where she needs to go, and make sure that they can't, because like I said, God forbid this is a third trial. You think about the amount of money we raised prior to the second trial. It was about a couple $100,000, maybe $400,000, 500, somewhere around there. Another $500,000 roughly or more needed to be raised for a second trial. And if the thing goes to a third trial, there's going to need to be even more money raised. So we're all just praying for Karen right now. This can be the end of it all in terms of defending herself. And now hopefully she can go on the offense, even though there is a civil suit pending against her, as we've heard of last year, which is coming her way. But that all said, it's time for at least this portion of Karen Read's life to come to an end. At least if we can get her out of this hot seat and they can acquit her, we've done the probably the biggest thing we can do for her. Then beyond that, we can all look at what ways we can help her additionally. Raising funds is still necessary for other things, then let's do it. But for now, I just want Karen Read not guilty and at no risk of going to jail for any of this, because we know, again, if we haven't seen enough of these examples that the defense has shown or ARCCA has shown. I mean, ARCCA had to this day, other than a microdots reenactment, one of the most professionally done reenactment videos that we've seen, and showed, some concessions. Okay, maybe the taillight could have broken or whatever. Or maybe a pirouette might have happened, as we saw the Randy the rescue dummy do a pirouette. But other than that, what's missing? There's not enough tears. There's not any tears in the right sleeve at all. There were tears in the left sleeve, and furthermore, if there's no tears in the right sleeve, even if the taillight had shattered, the arm's already out of the way practically by the time that taillight has any opportunity to penetrate, and at worst scuffs maybe the right sleeve to a small degree, but there's really not enough information there to show that the wounds on John's arm, as they were photographed and as they were reported, could have in any way, shape, or form been anything but a dog attack. Mizzy said it earlier on the show. The wounds were not only there, they were puncture wounds. There's no time for the taillight to puncture the skin. And additionally, those wounds are pattern wounds. And those wounds definitely, when you look at it, reflect on the lower part of the upper arm or lower bicep, tricep, appear to be claw marks. Around the elbow, it appears to be teeth marks. Among the upper forearm, it appears to be claw marks again, which is consistent with a dog having his claws, and his teeth, and basically biting into an arm. It's all very consistent with that. And again, may this jury see all this. May this jury make note of this when they talk about reasonable doubt, because realistically, There's only, of all the arguments the defense has, and there's more than enough of them, only one of them is needed to prove reasonable doubt. So if the defense has proven well over numerous times, 12 to 24 times over, that there's reasonable doubt, then they only need one of those to be enough for her to be acquitted on all three charges. And I think the defense has gone well beyond the call of duty in defending Karen Read. They've done a fantastic job. This has been an absolute master class in defending someone in court. ARCCA, again, their presentation was phenomenal, and it was a lot better than the Blue Man Group paint job that we saw done out by Aperture. And the real loser in all of this is maybe the Commonwealth.
Did you say amateur?
Amateur, no, I said amateur, but it could be confused with amateur. You're right. But $400,000 of taxpayer money, $400,000 was paid to Aperture to run a reenactment that was far inferior in comparison to that of ARCCA's. So I'll let anybody take the floor that wants it right now.
Yeah.
Jump in additional thoughts.
You can all expect more puffery and lack of substance from Welcher when he's called on rebuttal. He's going to just pontificate without any scientific substance to his opinions when he is called on the Commonwealth rebuttal case. It's just going to continue. The reporting that I've heard coming out of the courtroom is that the jury does not, at least visually, appear to be resonating with him. And they're just incomparable. You can't compare Welcher with Wolf. And I imagine Welcher. I want to make sure I didn't say Rentler.
Yeah.
You can't compare Welcher with
Yeah.
Wolf. And also a lot of people underestimate the power and potency of Rentler's upcoming testimony. So as a biomechanical expert who is going to be really tying it all together, and if you all recall, Daniel Wolf was saying, I can't give opinions on that. I'm not giving those medical pieces to this testimony that I'm offering you. Rentler is really going to drill home some of the significance of the impacts of whatever, the alleged impacts of the taillight or the diffuser or any other part of the vehicle on the human body, with a tremendous more amount of substantive education, training, skill, qualifications from a reputable entity with a vast background, having performed all of these analytics and experiments and services for some of the most notable clients and or entities that we could ever think of, like the NHL and NASA,
Right.
etc. So keep an eye on Rentler coming up. But also, there was something that popped into my head, which I do also want to mention. Let's not forget, and I just want to go back to the jury selection process in terms of the 12. Not only can I forecast a more transparent bingo ball process when we have the alternates selected, but also let's not forget, there was heightened scrutiny on the amount of oversight and involvement that Fanning had on the jury. So Fanning, it was alleged, of course, Bev disagreed, but it was alleged by Karen and her team in their motion to dismiss for extraordinary governmental misconduct that Fanning had improper oversight and involvement with the jury. I have not heard anything, nothing, unless others have, since the trial 2.0 started, as to where he has kind of been involved with this jury, if anything, which should be nothing. He should have no involvement with the jury. So I really do anticipate that because Karen and the public have identified that there was alleged impropriety and misgivings in how this prior jury was handled, I think it's going to be harder now. It's going to be harder now for there to be undue influence or any shenanigans with selecting the bingo balls. There's going to be much more of a heightened awareness of when the alternates get picked and discharged for their service. people are going to say, see, this is what we're talking about. There's definitely a conspiracy here. I think that's less likely. And then also, I do think that the jurors themselves, from what I am seeing myself and hearing through reporting, they're all making facial expressions. They're all visually and physically reacting to some of what's going on in the courtroom. So if that's the case, I think it may be a little bit harder for jurors who are arguably Karen Read leaning to just get picked off.
Mm-hmm. Britt, do you have any thoughts on any of that or anything else they should talk about?
That, I mean, that's very reinforcing to hear.
It is. No,
I
definitely
need to be a kindergarten teacher, I think. I tend to make people feel better.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
She's our emotional support lawyer.
She is. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. She's not just an attorney, she's also a psychologist.
Yeah, I got a good feeling, guys. I got a real good feeling.
What I did want to ask you, Nan, is we were all shocked that Bev is allowing a rebuttal for the Commonwealth. Are they for sure going to get the last word now? Or is
they meaning the defense? Oh,
correct. Or is the defense going to be allowed to use the rebuttal to then say, okay, well, now doors have been opened for X, Y, and Z, so we would now like to call person A and person B.
Right.
Are they going to be able to get the last word?
Yeah, so that's a great question. First, everyone needs to understand, and I'm sure they do, that the Commonwealth made this mess by providing revised materials or reports that didn't exist by ambush, by serving them late. They kicked off a cascade of derivative effects. Now, suddenly the defense was having to play catch up and to get ARCCA to issue new opinions, which they did on or about May 7th or 8th in the form of a report, which then is now prompting, because Bev does anything Brennan does, it now prompts Bev to allow the Commonwealth to have an opportunity to call Welcher on a rebuttal. And there were subsequently drafted opinions from Welcher and Burgess. It's a whole mess. That's the type of stuff that doesn't happen. It's not supposed to happen. And it's the stuff that frustrates criminal defense attorneys like myself, because we know those are not the rules that we all kind of sign up to play under. But with that said, Judge Bev has allowed the Commonwealth to have their rebuttal, and they're going to call, I'm sure, Welcher. They're going to call Crosby to rebut the the dog bite allegations that were laid out by Dr. Russell. And that may be the very last word. There's no guarantee that the judge will allow a SUR rebuttal, that's S-U-R, SUR rebuttal, to be held by the defense. It's going to depend on what, as you were saying, doors were opened. If there needs to be an opportunity for Karen's team to call witnesses to SUR rebut what comes out on the rebuttal. But that's risky. And it's risky for a psychological reason. I think this jury has had it. Even though this trial isn't as long as trial 1.0, juries don't want to hear both sides bickering over experts. We always hear the term battle of the experts. It's a battle of the experts. Right. Juries can only tolerate so much of that. And I do detect, and I think maybe you all do as well, there's a little bit of he's got to get the last word dynamic going on between Brennan and most notably Jackson. A little bit between Brennan and Alessi, but it's more Jackson and Brennan. And that can only kind of parlay so far. Then you start running a risk that the jury gets annoyed. And honestly, some of this science, as it specifically relates to the tail light and the biomechanics, my opinion, the jury by now is either getting it or not getting it.
Man, they got it.
Mhm.
Man, they got it. They
I
saw
think
they
so
saw
too.
ARCCA's experiment, and I talked about this with Ted. I said they've seen the recreation. They saw finger painting, and then they saw an actual real experiment. And I don't care after seeing that presentation how much you think that you're going to disparage that expert on the stand. You saw the experiment. That's now in my head. I can't get rid of that. As much as
Right.
Hank tried to get up and go, "Oh, your wife," and all this shit. There, it's in your head. It's in your head. That's not going away. And when we're visual creatures, you know that.
Yeah.
Right.
With the power of the internet and social media and phones, our brains have completely, changed from textbooks to now visual on a screen. That's how we
Right.
respond now. But it's there. It's in their
It's
head.
there.
It's not going away.
And they're getting it. And I just feel like Britt, don't worry, and no one else should worry if it ends on the Commonwealth's note. You know what I mean? Like if we don't get a Sir rebuttal, I think the risks of having a Sir rebuttal are, there's definitely risks to doing that, and the benefits are not that robust. So I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay.
Oh,
Well, thank you.
I was happy to see the ARCCA reenactment too. I honestly, as much as we all kind of laughed at Welch's, I was actually kind of happy to see his too, because what I've been kind of looking for is kind of presentations in court that show an attempt to try to display what had happened. And what I found notable about Welch's reenactment, I don't think this is what he intended to do, but he actually proved that at 2 miles an hour, that was enough to knock his own arm away, which kind of was a long-standing theory I had, that the arm probably wouldn't have been there.
Right.
And I thought Welch's point was actually counterintuitive or a counterpoint to the Commonwealth's own argument, because they just proved at 2 miles an hour, the arm is already knocked out of the way. And what ARCCA proved was that, okay, if in a scenario the taillight did shatter, and in ARCCA's scenario it did, which actually shocked me, that arm was still knocked out of the way. And by that point, the taillight wasn't impactfully ratcheting into the arm, it was chasing the arm and just shattering all over the place. And just, like I said, it just proved how ridiculous this is. Now, I think another thing should be noted is that given the distance that vehicle had to back up, I didn't notice that ARCCA had accounted for the curb or the curve in the road. I didn't notice that they had done that. So I'm not trying to pick apart what ARCCA didn't do, but there was also no curve. There was no curve. But I think the purpose of ARCCA's reenactment was just to show, in a situation where a vehicle did back up into somebody's arm, this is what would happen. But that still doesn't account for, the curve, all that stuff as well, which was factored into this. And also that would have probably road written right up onto the lawn at some point. And there would have been lawn, tire marks in the lawn, and it would have been a really more dressed up crime scene in that sense. But what do we know? Apple Health data shows that John's body went towards that house. It could have gone in any one of different directions, but it went right towards the particular house. It walked up 3 flights of stairs. There's no way to walk up that street, at Fairview, and have any chance of that mapping you as walking up 3 flights of stairs, because Apple Health data is a little bit more sufficient than that. But I think that overall, how can you sit here as a juror and even remain skeptical anymore that this could have been done? And I just think that the defense has again done a great job. I actually, like I said, I think the defense has done a much better job than last time, because I think that they had more information at hand. I think ARCCA's done a better job this time, because they actually had a reenactment that was done, and that's even before Dr. Rentschler, to Britt's point earlier, has had an opportunity to testify. And someone said in the comments earlier, what kind of information or video will he present in court, and what will that show as well? Because Britt's point was earlier, Dr. Wolf is presenting you part of it, but not all, because Rentschler's got another portion that he's going to present in court as well. But they've done a very fine-tuned job here. And again, I thought one of the best points was, and Britt talked about this earlier, was the interior of that taillight. And like I said, doesn't add up. They couldn't prove that, even ARCCA couldn't prove that there would have been cuts to that right sleeve, and that would create puncture wounds. And like I said, at worst, I would expect nothing more than maybe the taillight to chase the arm and maybe lightly scratch or graze the shirt at the very least. But you see when it's there, it's just the taillight's after, and there goes the arm, and the taillight's basically nowhere to find. Let's see, we got a question here. Lazy L, why do you think they didn't admit some of Dr. Russell's photos of dog bites? She has a collection. They might refute that because it might be, I guess, Nan might touch up here on this, but if it's not a relevant photo relevant to John's arm, they might dismiss that. Nan, is that accurate?
Yeah, they can't. So if they, in terms of what is quote admissible evidence, you can't just admit before a jury pictures that are illustrative of something else. Like you can't put unreliable evidence before a jury. It can be deemed hearsay. It can be deemed the risks of misrepresenting something or unduly influencing a jury outweigh the benefits. The whole goal of admitting evidence before a jury is to put reliable evidence. So while we may think it's reliable, if pictures don't depict the actual condition and visual presentation of the wounds on John O'Keefe and are just by way of example or exemplar, Judge Bev or any other judge would never allow them in.
Yeah, they would deny it.
Mazza,
yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick, someone in your chat named Lisa said that she donated and forgot to put your name in the comments.
Okay, perfect.
Lisa, I think her last name was Johnson.
Okay, perfect. I'll count it. I'll be on the lookout for it. If it's anonymous, I'll just count it anyways. Thank you, Britt. I'll get that counted up. I just added in two $25 ones. We're over $5,700 right now. $5,764. This is the highest level donation total in a fundraiser I've ever conducted. 4,400 plus was the highest one I have ever done. This is now 5,700.
It's one thing you've done, Mazza. I got to give you a lot of credit for. You are the king of fundraising for Karen Read. Like as far as the YouTube, I know Nick Rocco is like the ultimate, but you are the YouTube. You're the YouTube go-to guy. So if you want to do, excuse me, fundraising for Karen Read, jump on Mazza's show and you've done a great job with that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's kind of become a thing for me that I've kind of focused on a lot is
you've done a good
just
job
raising these funds. Just kind of the more and more I look at all the finances that could be involved in this whole thing, it's become just something I wanted, because again, my biggest fear is a third trial. And my biggest fear is what if we just collectively the glare too. Yeah, absolutely, KT. What if we we allow the fundraising to dip? And then all of a sudden,
and she's got civil suits too. So.
Right. Yeah. And I'm just thinking what if that happens? And then, I'm just trying to kind of put the foot down on the gas pedal, at least for my own show, and just try to keep the funds driving in, because my biggest fear, like I said, is a third trial, which like I said, even though like I said, Nan's done a fantastic job establishing why this will probably end in an acquittal. But despite that being
there's no
the
guarantee.
most likely scenario, right, exactly, Nan, there could be a situation where they do just like last year, do something unforeseen that forces a third trial. And that's my biggest fear, and that's my biggest motivator the past couple of weeks to continue doing fundraising based episodes on my channel, because like I said, I'm paranoid about it. I really am, because I don't underestimate these people for a second. And it really bothered me too that when Karen Read's defense team battled the upper branches of the court system in our state, they kicked back and took the judge's side. That really kind of stood out to me as alarming as well. That really bothers me quite a bit, still to this day.
And it's happened before. It's happened in Suffolk County, Massachusetts, Commonwealth versus Sean Ellis. So, I mean, you never know.
Captain Skidmark says his name. I hope the defense brings emphasis on to the debris field during the test, as opposed to where Massachusetts police found and taillight on the 29th. Yeah, in other words, basically mapping the comparative chart of where it's spread compared to, because they were claiming it went inside the hoodie and everything. And, I mean, well, that could be possible. Who knows? The debris field probably would have been significantly different. And I think there was actually a picture, Nan, I'm not sure if it was you that pointed this out on X, but somebody did, that the rescue Randy actually ended up feet behind the vehicle. as
It wasn't
opposed.
me.
Oh, wasn't you? Okay, all right. Just take credit for it. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, it was me.
There's one picture that shows Rescue Randy. He's like 10 feet behind the vehicle, as opposed to knocked on the lawn, and that again goes to what point, when people are, as we believe, are trying to establish a frame job or a cover up. They don't think about all these facts in the heat of the moment when they're dropping a body on the lawn. So Brian's laughing.
You're making Brian laugh.
Yeah, I know, right? But it's just
I'm just laughing at a photo that was on X. So
it's all right. No,
go to
it's
my
all right.
account after, you'll see it.
Okay, you got it.
It's interesting, Mazza, because I feel so passionately about the fact that people on the other side of this are critical of Rescue Randy and any of the alleged wrongdoings of these experiments. Like the antis are all over this. They think that ARCCA has proven that Karen Read has hit John O'Keefe. I don't understand. Oh wait, what do we got here?
Oh dear.
Aperture to amateur. Yeah.
Did you make that, Brian?
I don't know who made it. But I just found it to be very funny.
That's
funny.
amazing. AI is unbelievable.
I don't know who made it, but I found it to be very funny.
That is
yeah. Well, it rhymes. It does rhyme with aperture.
Right.
But anyway, oh my God, what was I even saying? So I look at this. I'm not a scientist. I don't get involved in the in-depth, granular analysis of all the tech. I never have. I keep it high level. But when I look at this, I say, ARCCA conducts experiments. They run these experiments without confirmation bias. They want to see, based on how many times you run a particular experiment, with the differing factors and values that are involved, you do what you can to create different environments that may or may not have existed during the time where the accident allegedly occurred. For example, they're making the tail light cold. They're trying to situate an arm in a position where it would have been or could have been hit. They're trying to emulate the scenario where this type of accident could take place and then see, based on trending, how things pan out. Then you have aperture on the other side. Brian is now, he's not on the screen, but he's completely tainted me. It's going to be forever amateur in my mind. But then you have amateur on the other side, and amateur has Judd Welcher, who's literally painting himself with finger paint and putting himself into the equation, which removes any impartiality. He's able to, and Brian and I had been kind of going over this a week or so ago, he's able to tweak certain pieces and scenarios, even the situating of his feet. You might have even been on that one of the streams too, Mazza, where we're talking about like which direction Welcher placed his feet. How did he line up? It's like hitting a baseball. If you're not properly in the right stance, you're going to hit the ball in the wrong place on the field. So you have someone like Welcher who definitely has a rooting interest in the outcome. We certainly know he has a rooting interest in the paycheck that he has gotten on the taxpayer's dime. So looking at all of that, like, I'm a big fan of Rescue Randy. I mean, this is the way experiments are supposed to take place, and they're kind of boring. So I went into Wolf's testimony thinking it was going to be a little boring, because that's how experts testify. It's like really technical, but I thought Daniel Wolf did a great job.
Yeah.
And the fact that the antis have taken away that the defense has been completely debunked through the cross-examination by Brennan, I laugh. I mean, it's as stupid as them saying that everyone's grifting. It's as stupid as them saying, or just insulting people based on their looks, or walks of life. So, it's going to be interesting to see how Wolf finishes and what Rentschler has to bring.
Right. And it's interesting, with Rentschler coming up, I expect Wolf will probably be on the stand for a good portion tomorrow, and then Rentschler Tuesday. What do we think? Rentschler's going to be the last witness for the defense?
No, La
No.
Posada. I think
Okay.
La Posada is going to be called for sure. Because if you remember, Jackson mentioned that they were going to have another medical examiner who was going to speak to, in their opinion, the fact that John was not left in the cold for that long. So they have to make good on that.
Yeah. That's a great point, because they have to account, like in their examination process here, about the temperature of John's body. Someone said earlier that there was no frostbite. Someone just said hypothermia. If there's no hypothermia, the body has to match the signs of legitimately being left out in the cold at 12 something in the morning, and then being out there till earlier in the morning. It's a situation where it's all got to line up. It's all going to be able to be reenacted in a way, or calibrate or calculated in a way that shows that body was out there for that amount of time. And really, like you said, that's probably the final hammer on the nail, because when you're already looking at everything in terms of reenactments, tail light shattering, the body wounds compared to what the Commonwealth is saying versus what the ARCCA is saying, that last nail in the coffin there is, or the last nail that's hammered in, is basically going to determine, hey, if the frostbite's there's no frostbite, there's no hypothermia. Again, even beyond that, even occurring or not, if someone dies in the cold because they get hit by a vehicle, there should be some signs of the cold weather affecting their body. If that's not there, that's the final straw for the Commonwealth. And realistically, or ultimately, I should say, why this should have never really gone to trial in the first place, little on a second trial, and additionally, why all these charges need to be dropped. I mean, they should have been dropped by the Commonwealth. They should have never pursued this case. They did. I get it, but again, this acquittal needs to happen last year. But I'll be fine if it happens this year as well. It's just wild to me that this thing ended up going to a second trial. But we've talked about, I think that the defense has restructured their process based on a lot of sampling of thoughts from Victoria George and other jurors that have called them, obviously Ronnie, and just got an idea whether we like all the jurors or not from last year, you appreciate their thoughts or not. Someone actually just made a great point. What about beyond the temperature? Where's all the blood?
Yep.
When you take a look at the wound sizes, I mean, like anyone that's ever, I've accidentally been jabbed with whatever, and that little portion of blood comes out of a little small area of my body. We're talking about an arm that was not just cut, but punctured in multiple areas, far bigger than what would cause a little bit. There'd be blood all over the place. So that's a great point in the chat there. That not even account, where's the blood? How can you account for all the blood beyond the temperature? Great point.
And so,
Matt,
go ahead,
man.
Brian.
No, go ahead.
So while we don't have a guarantee that there's really only 2 more witnesses left for the defense, it's looking like that's probably accurate. But I just wanted to mention to you all and your audience that I think calling Dr. La Posada, with her medical experience and a forensic analysis, I think it's key. It's going to be chef's kiss, and here's why. Because the medical examiner, in addition to all the reasons that you just stated, she's going to be able to tie it all together in terms of making the pieces of the puzzle make sense. She'll be able to talk about the lack of frostbite. She'll be able to talk about what certain things would have been present or had to have happened as it's kind of juxtaposed or overlaid upon time stamping of phone and Apple Health data activity. She'll be able to comment on the findings of Dr. Scorti-Bello, who, as we know, was not favorable to the Commonwealth. She'll be able to offer opinions on the dog bites, the puncture wounds, or the scratch marks. I'm not saying she's a dog bite expert, but she'll be able to comment on what those are more indicative of.
Yeah.
She'll be able to comment on the lack of bruising or the lividity of the blood, the pooling of the blood in the deceased body in terms of what that would show. She'll be able to make sure that the jury understands that certain indicators on John's deceased body would have been signs of rescue efforts and not signs of injury. She'll comment on the laceration above the eye, the more likely causes of the injury to the back of the head. All of these different things, some of which are medical, but some of which are going to kind of rest over on top of other measurements like an alleged collision or Apple Health data. So I think she's a very interesting and hopefully a solid choice of a witness to close out the defense case with. It also, they've chosen not to call the Proctors and the Higgins and all of those risks that are inherent with doing that. So to have a medical expert like La Posada come in and just wrap it all up with a neat and tidy bow, keeping in mind that you'll still have AJ and or Alessi and or Yannetti to really dig into the Commonwealth's witnesses who are presented on the rebuttal case. This is going in beautifully. It really is.
I got a couple things. By the way, ARCCA is trending on X right now, so that's pretty cool.
Wow.
Hopefully we're part of that conversation.
Yeah, we probably are. Hopefully.
Whipped up that conversation.
Maybe they'll
and
be
then
able to reopen their Twitter account.
What's that?
I said maybe ARCCA will be able to reopen their Twitter account.
We have breaking news, and it's right there on your screen.
Nice.
Holy
Way to
That's
go.
a lot
Holy.
in 2 hours. That's a good
Yeah.
job, man. That's really great.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I'm
Sorry, Brian. Anyway,
gonna probably say something that's very controversial, and people are probably gonna get mad at me in the chat, but I don't think that the defense calls anybody else. I think they just end with ARCCA, the strongest experts. Why go back to all that stuff, Nan? Why hash all that? Jury's already seen it. Like you were saying earlier, they're probably like, all right, I just want to get to the end and know how I'm going to be. Why go back through all that and have to bring in all these other experts?
I think the only additional one would be La Posada, because this is my opinion, everybody. Scorty Bello is not a good witness. I'm not saying she's bad for the defense. She does not testify well. She's, how do I say this? And I only give this experience based on my healthcare law background, where I'm sitting doctors for testimony. She's flat. I think, in my opinion, the defense needs someone who is more animated and personable to kind of break down the issues in an affirmative way, not a reactive way like Scorty Bello. Scorty Bello is, not good posture, says, well, possibly, I can't say that. It's likely, like, she's very passive as a witness. La Posada's not going to be that way.
Dan, let me ask you, because people are biting back at me, no pun intended here in the chat. But Garrett Wing, we know how valuable he'll be, but why would they have to go back if they just did that with Russell? I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah,
devil's advocate's good.
This is great.
I know people are going to be like, fucking LTL was saying all this other stuff. No, I'm just trying to create some opposite conversation here. So why would they go back and go back through that again if we just got it with Russell?
It's very interesting, and I like that. I like that you press issues to spur on conversation. It's it's your mantra, to be honest with you. So here I'm going to put a little controversial opinion in that will answer your question. I don't think that the defense should call Garrett Wing. I think he's great. I think he has unique experience. He will present key testimony that helps show these were dog bites, etc. But here's my thought, and I'm not saying it's a mistake to call him. I'm simply saying, as the trial grows long in the tooth, I don't necessarily think they should call him. And because you've had Dr. Russell, who is most notably like very skilled medical doctor who can offer those opinions from a forensic pathological experience and other reasons. Two, as far as Garrett Wing is concerned, think about it this way, folks. What does the dog bites prove? Okay, hear me out. The dog bites prove John went in the house. There's other things that prove John went in the house that have already come out. There's been a major debunking, in my opinion, or not debunking. There has been major proof offered before the jury that the 2:27 a.m. Google search happened. Okay, even Whiffen and Hyde, they had to make concessions on the stand and or admit that they were unaware of the other's opinions on the subject. So that came forward. But the defense has already shown that these, and not only shown through testimony, but shown through pictures, these look like dog bites. So they've already shown that, okay, a dog likely injured John's arm. He had therefore went in the house. But what else does it show? Like, I wouldn't waste the remaining gas in the tank of this jury to bring in Garrett Wing. Please, no one misquote me on that. I think he'll be great if they call him fabulous, but they've already proven the point. I don't think it's necessary.
That was my point. And then to go back, like where you've already been, to bring the jury, have to go back to that again.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to get probably tired of that. And this is why I think this is a good strategy. I think they're going to get tired of that with Crosby. If the Commonwealth brings in Crosby, they're going to go, why are we going back to that? Like, we just heard almost a day and a half of whole testimony about this, and we're going to go back to that? Really? Like,
yeah, and honestly, with such the issue of the dog bites is such a visual determination that's made. I guarantee all of you, all of your audience, all of the antis, and all of the jurors made up their minds as to what caused those lacerations and puncture wounds or deep abrasions the minute they saw the picture.
I think they're there.
So it's visceral. It's like, okay, no, it was tail light, or no, that's an animal. It was an animal, and move off of it. It's going to spend or expend the goodwill that the defense has with the jury. I don't think they should call Wing unless it's absolutely critical.
Needed. Yeah. If something comes up with Crosby that kind of walks the defense team, which I don't think is going to happen, they'll bring in Wing. They'll bring Wing in.
Well, and then adding to
that was a good conversation, by the way.
It was.
And then adding to that, in summation, they'll be able to make an argument that if they call Wing, they won't be able to make in their closing arguments, which is if the Commonwealth calls Crosby, what the defense will be able to say in closing is Crosby's not a medical doctor. They'll be able to say to the jury, Crosby may have a PhD in animal behavior.
Yes.
He's not a medical doctor. We have Dr. Russell saying to you, who is a medical doctor,
right,
who can speak to causation of injury, who actually looks at human injuries, saying to you, this was not caused by a taillight. This was caused by a dog. Crosby's not a medical doctor.
And that's my fear with Wing, Britt, is that they bring Garrett Wing up. Commonwealth goes, you're going to listen to this guy? He's not a medical doctor, Yeah. He has no, and nothing against Garrett Wing. I think he's great.
Right,
He's phenomenal. He's phenomenal. But, and I don't want to be beating up on him here because I think he's great. But I think, again, I think we go back to if the defense falls in a certain spot with Crosby, they're going to call Wing.
But, it's also important to note, so everyone realizes this, sometimes you don't call an expert, but the defense still uses the expert. I'm sure they speak to Garrett Wing. Garrett Wing can help them prep their cross of Crosby. Garrett Wing can show the defense pictures and say, this is what happens. He can do demonstrations for the defense behind closed doors and say, this is what you got to ask him. Here's what you do. It's like consulting. So even though, in my opinion, unless something changes that changes this opinion, which I reserve the right to do at all times.
Yeah, right. Correct.
I don't think they call Garrett Wing. And I do think, as an engaged expert for the defense, Garrett Wing should give as much consulting guidance and counsel that he can offer to the Karen's
That's a good
defense
point,
team
man.
as much as he can.
Yeah.
By the way, that's something that costs money.
Yeah.
A
Right.
lot of people don't realize that you have to pay your experts for their services. So that's why fundraisers like this are so important.
Yeah,
That's a great point, man.
exactly. And I think that's huge too, because he can consult on the outside. Now, don't you think it's necessary to? And I think this is one of the great things I liked about the defense's witness list was that they put down everybody pretty much that they could think of, and I think that that's a good idea because I think you're probably better off just putting down as many witnesses as you think are potential witnesses, and then from that point, when you're trying to build your argument in the courtroom, just pick the witnesses that you actually feel are best to use. That way, if you're ever in a situation, if you feel like, well, maybe we do need Garrett Wing, you can just call him, and I think things like that. Don't you agree? Things like that are good.
Yeah. Well, you have, and Mazza, you have to name everyone you might call. Otherwise, you can't call them. But one of the other reasons to put a more people on your witness list is to confuse your adversary. So if the defense says, I don't know how many people were on the witness list, but if the defense says, here's 46 witnesses, there's law enforcement, there's civilians, they name everybody because they have to preserve all their rights to later call them as witnesses, whether they use them or not. Someone like Brennan and Lally, they get that witness list and they go, oh, you know what? Like, look at all these people they're going to call. It actually dilutes the attorney's manpower. They have to prep for every single one of them.
Right.
At least in the weeks leading up to trial. Once trial starts, the parties are very collegially will deal with one another and say, oh, who's coming up? How many more do you got? So you'll hear Judge Bev say things like, we've talked and we're ahead of schedule. And, but leading up to the trial, the other side has no idea if you're going to call 46 witnesses or you're going to call 7.
Right.
Yeah.
And the prosecution kind of employed that same tactic too. For example, they added an overabundance of witnesses, and I said, "Oh boy, here we go." I mean, Adam Lally, to his credit, probably called every witness he listed last year, but Brennan, he called a very select list. And then to that point, the defense kind of in turn renamed a lot of the same witnesses on their own list and kind of matched them, which I thought was a great strategy as well, because you never knew if there was a scenario where someone, maybe, I don't know if maybe it was all part of this was about Proctor, maybe the defense wasn't going to call Proctor and the defense wanted to kind of put a situation out there. Well, we'll list them and then make the prosecution think, well, we don't intend to call them, but we want to list them, My God, if the defense list, calls them too. So I thought that was good. Definitely a lot of mind games. I definitely thought that Hank Brennan was certainly an upgrade in terms of an adversary, an opposition opponent compared to Lally. Definitely a lot more mind games this time around, especially with them, going over every mundane detail from her interviews to all that. Definitely was a lot more of an aggravate, an irritant in terms of his process. But I think the defense did a great job. Just basically going, whatever his plan was, they kind of answered that call very well. Didn't seem to have much trouble with it, and did a great job of just, again, presenting their own case. And their cross-examinations on his witnesses were phenomenal. And I thought that their direct examinations on their own witnesses, whether those witnesses are favorable to Karen or not, of course, in terms of backing her up or being someone that's really representing the other side, I thought they did a bang-up job in this. And like I said, I just hope that when this thing all ends, whether it's this week or next week or the week after even, however long it takes that jury to deliberate, that this thing ends with the right decision, which is Karen Read's innocence, because I think it's clear that this vehicle didn't cause this death. There was no vehicular homicide at all, and that this was simply a man that was beaten to death and obviously attacked by a dog. I mean, the one being we can guarantee was involved in this was a dog. Whether or not who assaulted him or whomever was involved in any physical confrontation can be up for debate, with probably never a definitive, absolute guarantee as to who did it. But we know a dog was involved, and like I said, it's puncture wounds that are in that arm. I mean, it's just you just don't get hit by a vehicle and taillight shatters and boom, it cuts up your entire arm. But like I said, I thought the ARCCA did a great job. The only thing I didn't like really about their reenactment was the arm on the string portion, and that was called out by Brennan. I thought that was one of their points of their presentation. I go, that might get called out there, and sure enough, it was. But ultimately, though, ARCCA's primary point was well established throughout their entire process, and they did a great job, I thought.
Yeah, I think putting it on, a crash test dummy or a mannequin or, Randy, something like that, I think probably would have been a little bit better actually for the jurors too, because if you have it on the mannequin or the crash test dummy and the arm is there, you actually would have saw, if it would have ripped the arm off, then that would have shown like he would have dislocated his shoulder or broken a bone or whatever it may be. But I think that you're gonna get cleanup on that on Monday when Rentschler takes the stand. So that's he's gonna give reasons to why that was probably done that. There's probably a specific reason it was done that way.
Yes.
And
Wolf actually said that on Cross. Now he didn't go into a full explanation. That was something that, I'm sure is going to get deferred to Rentschler, like you mentioned, Brian. But Wolf did at least say that each of those tests had specific purposes.
Yeah,
so,
that's a great point. Yeah, it's a great touch up, Britt.
So, maybe there was a reason that the arm was disembodied in one test and attached.
That's a great point, because I think to your point, Britt, that's a great counterpoint to my point to kind of get me to see it in more fullness, is that maybe they wanted an isolated version of that arm alone just because it would get the jury to focus on that arm. So I really like your point. I like that a lot. That's a great it's a great counterpoint to kind of get me to think more fully around that idea, because Brennan did attack the arm on the string, but like you said, I think it provided a nice isolatory look at that arm alone to get that jury to focus on that while ignoring the body, at least for one point of the presentation. Great point, Brett. I liked it a lot.
I'm not talking to him right now. I'm talking to you.
Here. The interesting thing is also all of the experiments, once they're recorded, they have to be handed over. I mean, so even though people visually didn't love the arm on a string, it has to go to the other side. Unlike what happens with the Commonwealth, they only tend to hand over things that perceivably favor the Commonwealth.
Right.
So I didn't love the arm on a string experiment, but that was the extent of my involvement with it. I'm like, well, that looks kind of chintzy, but like Britt was saying, maybe it did have some type of potency to it, and it is interconnected to other pieces of the full, unbiased experimentation.
There's got to be a reason. So,
Nan, I have a question for you.
Yes.
If hypothetically Crosby is called, I have taken on, I felt a personal responsibility for Crosby because he comes from Florida. And
Florida man.
Yes. Did I find some Florida man shit on this? This was interesting, to say the least. And my question is, can this be used on Cross? So, Crosby, in the 2010s, somewhere in that decade, used to run an animal shelter, adoptable animals. And he, at one point, was directly above this guy who was quite literally the Jeffrey Dahmer of pets. He was taking home animals, slaughtering and eating them.
Ew.
In particular was a pig named Fluffy, who, by the way, there were two families who were interested in adopting Fluffy at the time. And this guy still took Fluffy home and ate him.
Oh.
And Crosby knew there was a full investigation from, I don't remember if it was the county or what, but yeah, again, it was some Florida man shit for sure. But
Only in Florida.
Crosby knew about it, did absolutely nothing to reprimand the pet Jeffrey Dahmer, and just let it continue for however long that happened. So can that be used on Cross to Crosby?
Yes.
I mean, we've already gotten people's wives involved here, so
Right. Yep. The only limitation to that is in Bev's circus, as I refer to it as, in Bev's circus, the parties have to hand over anything that they're going to use for impeachment during cross-examination. They have to hand it over beforehand.
Okay.
So I'm confident that the defense team knows about the Florida man bullshit. I'm
About
confident that if I were crossing Crosby, I would use it, because it just completely undermines his professionalism at a minimum. But they would have had to have handed it over. And honestly, Brennan looks at everybody's streams and he's reading all the social media. He's soaking it all in. I've seen you post about that a couple of times, and I'm like, this guy's a complete lech. So yeah, I think that's going to come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm watching.
I hope so.
I know everything.
He does.
Justice for Fluffy.
Yeah, justice for Fluffy the pig.
But yeah, I do hope that's used if Crosby is called.
Yeah, that's great.
By the
Yeah,
way, I just want to bring some awareness, if I can, really quick. Do you mind if I talk about Aiden really quick, Mazza?
Yes, go ahead.
Please.
So tomorrow, Aiden's trial is tomorrow in Dedham District Court. He's put out a post. He says, "Hey guys, do you mind if I read this, Mazza?"
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sure. He says, "Hey guys, I'm looking forward to my trial tomorrow in Dedham District Court." He said, "All are welcome to come at 9 a.m. Please don't wear any Turtle Boy gear if you do, as I want to make sure all parties receive a fair trial. Sadly, it will be taking place at the same time as the Karen Read trial, so I'm not sure if it will be televised or streamed. I can't wait." So that's from Aiden.
Is that in the? If I missed this, I apologize. Is that in the courthouse, like across the street?
Yeah, the district court.
The
Yeah.
district court. Yeah, catty corner. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, that's why I'm so happy I go up there from time to time, because I never understood how all of the courts were situated. Now I know firsthand, and I will be up next week. If this trial is still going on, I have a seat in the courtroom.
Nice.
Good to
Yeah,
hear.
even for jury deliberations, which I think are going to be quick.
I feel
That's
bad for my friend Lauren, because she was personally invited by Karen to go sit in, and then we
Thursday.
had Thursday was off, so she
Yeah.
couldn't-
Oh no, I didn't think
Yeah.
about that.
yeah.
Yeah,
so-
there's another woman.
She's like, "I would have been in there during ARCCA."
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
There's by the way, Mazza, if I may just mention, I just wanted to plug something. There's I don't know if it's been advertised yet, but a week from, so every Monday night the North Shore does its nacho night at JJ Grimsby's in Stoneham, and then so I think there's one tomorrow, and then a week. So the week later, the week I'll be up, I think they have one on Monday night, the North Shore Nacho Night, but they're also having a special one on that Tuesday, the 17th. I will be there again. James Jackson will be there as well. We're very excited. So I don't think they've advertised it yet. If they have, I apologize to all of you. I've been traveling. But there is a special additional North Shore Nacho Night on Tuesday, the 17th. I think it's the 17th, the Tuesday of the week following this week at JJ Grimsby's in Stoneham. I will be there with James Jackson.
Perfect.
And you guys should come.
Guess when you'll be on Monday night.
That's right. I will be every Monday night. I'm on the Monday wind up.
But
The weekly
you'll be here on the 16th in studio.
I will be in Brian's studio the 16th in person, sitting at the podcasting new table again. I love it. I'm very excited. I'll be there in person, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody again. Even if the trial is over, I'm still coming up.
Perfect.
Good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Celebratory.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So we're
No,
gonna go.
Turtle Boy. I'm just gonna say this.
Okay.
Turtle Boy is not in custody. He's free. I'm just telling you, his trial starts tomorrow, and he's just telling everybody if you're gonna go, everybody is welcome to go. Starts at 9 a.m. at the district court. It's right across the street from the Superior Court where Karen Read is in trial, and it'll be 9 a.m. He's just asking everybody, please don't wear any Turtle Boy gear if you do come, because he wants to make sure that both parties get a fair trial, and that's pretty honorable to say that, considering all the shit that he has gone through with this nightmare.
Yeah. I agree. And even and I would go one step further, because I know he won't necessarily say this. It's that if anyone is going to go and they're watching this, like, don't be the reason that there's a problem. Just don't. I'm not even beyond apparel. Like, don't make snide comments. Don't shout anything.
Mm-hmm. Be classy.
Be the better person.
If you're going, do what everyone there is fighting to do on a daily basis, which is to have access to the courts, to be within the buffer zone, to be present, to see how the judicial process is supposed to work, to stand up for what you believe in, to stand up for those you believe in, and just don't be the reason that something goes awry. So I wish I could be there myself, and wish him lots of luck for tomorrow.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're going to be definitely thinking.
There's no streaming of that. Is there? His trial
probably will be on Zoom.
Yeah, probably like an audio-based audio-based court hearing. Typically Aiden's have been audio-based, and then usually it's the Gallagher that is has told me that he's been broadcasting those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Mike might pick it up. I'm not sure. I mean, it's a very interesting day. You got Karen Read and Aiden. So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to get going soon. I'm so sorry. I've had a long day of travel. So, had a great time.
Nan, thank you so much. Yeah, I was just about getting ready to wrap the show up, in fact. So great on that note. Nan Gallagher, attorney Nan Gallagher, thank you so much for coming on this program once again. I just appreciate
Thanks for asking me.
You're welcome. I appreciate your input, and you've been a total rock star with getting us all the really, just like Mark Betterow and Melanie Little and a few others, just giving us all the nice introspective, attorney, not only your own perspective, but the attorney-based perspective on all this. And we deeply appreciate it. And you have one of the best rooms that I've ever seen for a show too. I like that. I like the door in the background.
Nice.
It is.
You're welcome here anytime, Mazza.
Thank you.
Yeah, just about a 4.5 hour drive. And anytime you want, we'll do a podcast together.
Yeah, right.
Thank you everyone for having me. And if you ever need anything, you know where to find me on X or on my Facebook page.
Perfect, Nan. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Nan Gallagher, attorney Nan Gallagher, everybody. She'll be in Massachusetts around the 17th.
Yeah.
Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Take care, guys. Good night.
Yeah. Bye-bye. All right, Britt, thank you for coming on the show. Just any final plugs for tomorrow? You're welcome.
Oh, yeah. So tomorrow, I think it's at 6 p.m. I'm having a brain fart on what time. But tomorrow on my show, I'm going to be having Jen Root and Mizzy on, and we're going to be talking about the Morrissey standouts that are coming up, but we're also going to kind of align all of the common denominators between the Karen Read case, the Sandra Birchmore case, and the Just on Root case. What investigators were commonly involved, and of course, the district attorney who has spearheaded and been at the center of a lot of these problems that we're seeing in Norfolk County. So make sure you join us tomorrow before the Monday night lineup on LTL. So
Britt,
thanks again for having me, Mazza. Congratulations on over $6,000 raised.
Oh, that's amazing. And
fundraising.
you know, it's everyone that comes on this show that helps to build the bigger audience too, Britt. And I can't thank you enough for coming on this program and just being absolutely a consistent guest for me. When I asked, you know, if you can come on here, I was like, absolutely, and appreciate it. And you've been doing great work on your channel as well. Just give everybody your YouTube channel and maybe your X location, X handle.
Sure. So the name that's shown at the bottom of my little square here on the screen, Britt Happens, that's my YouTube username, all one word. And then if you were to turn the E and Happens into a 3, because somebody on Twitter already thought of it, I changed it to a 3 on Twitter. So if you'd like to find me on Twitter, it's Britt Happens with a 3 instead of an E. But yeah, I'm always happy to come on, Mazza. Anytime you're wanting to do this, if you need a filler, I got you anytime. Thanks again.
You're the best, Britt. Thank you so much. Britt happens. Sometimes things happen, and it's Britt that happens. So, Britt, you're the best from Florida. Yep.
Y'all
Excellent.
take it easy. Thank you.
Bye, Britt.
Take care. All right. Brian LTL had a great, really a lot of shows today, his own show, and then an appearance on this show, which was just a very big day for him. Big Sunday. And Ted Daniels, Boston 25. Brian, I can't thank you enough for coming on here, man.
Yeah, of course. If everybody didn't see my interview with Ted, they can head over to my YouTube channel and check out my interview I had this afternoon with Ted Daniel. It's only an hour. So, I mean, it's a very easy watch and you get a lot of informative information there coming from Ted's side on the Karen Read trial, first trial and retrial, which was really nice. We have to touch into both of them. And then tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be live on my channel with retired Mass State Police Todd McGee, and of course Nan Gallagher. And we also have another attorney that will be joining us tomorrow night. So we're gonna have a four-party panel, and I'll reveal that attorney tomorrow. So make sure you come over and join us at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then on Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I have Jess Machado back on the live show for the Wednesday night rundown with Jess, and that's 8 p.m. as well. So lots of programming on LTL this week.
That's awesome, Brian. We just got a $250 donation that just came in right at the very end here from a Matthew. It's going to get us up to $6,477. I'll put the total in here. I'll put this down as the final total. Let's type it in here right now. 6,000.
I love it.
400.
And by the way, Mazza, just to let people know,
yeah,
when this stream ends, the donations don't have to stop. Like
that's right. That's a good point.
In that chat replay, you'll see the link that will keep dropping. Click on that and keep donating to Karen Read's Defense Fund.
That's a great point. Yeah, keep donating to Karen Read's Defense Fund. But this will be the amount that's counted towards the official total for the show. And actually, looks like we got another 45.60. So I got to put that in again.
There you go.
They keep coming in. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate
I dropped the
it.
link there too. So anybody's watching this in replay, just click on it and take it right there.
That's awesome. That's been fantastic. So, Brian, thank you for coming on the program tonight. I'll catch up with you later, sir, and we'll talk soon. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Brian LTL, ladies and gentlemen, from Let's Talk Live Media, coming on MazzaMedia tonight. And what a great show we've had, and a great panel that's been here with us. And it's been absolutely awesome to have everybody guest star and guest appear on this show. It's a community effort. It really is. And that's all I got to say about that. I'll zip through some super chats real quickly here. Let me just do this real quick. I just want to get my screenshot before I leave. Let's do this. Let's make sure I get this screenshot before I leave every show so I can post it on the online. There we go. Good. Got that. All right. That's good. All right. I'll zip through some super chats here, guys. Thank you so much for all your donations to Karen Read's Defense Fund as well. And super chats real quickly. Let's see what we got here. Yvonne, thank you so much. You can hear over here. I hate mystery SD card nonsense. Oh, same here. Winger answered a few. Got yours posted. Great. Yeah, Bev's been doing a lot of hand signaling. That's for sure. Ending the trial with Dr. Renslow to say, what should John have then? La Posada to say, what did John did have? That comparison's genius. That's a great point. I like the emoji you got there too with the Christmas pickle. That's funny. Lazy L. Burgess's testimony was definitely more entertaining than Wolf's. There was no frostbite. Nothing else matters. I agree. even though blood should count too. I will have faith, Winger. I will have faith. Definitely going to have faith. I believe there'll be a good ending. Like I said, I'm kind of cautious and pessimistic. Captain Skidmarks, we got yours earlier. Norman Corey, once the jury hears Rensler say the arm would have broken at impact 20 miles an hour, the taillight would not have been completely destroyed. It's over. That's a great point. That's a great point. Exactly. Why do you think they didn't admit some of Dr. Russell's photo? Oh, we got that one for you already. Don't kid yourself. The CW has something up their sleeve. They are master criminals. Just wait. I don't doubt that at all. We got you earlier. And we got this one from you, Winger, earlier. And this one too, Winger. Thank you again. Thank you, Terry. I'll try to do what I can do. It's probably going to be a very limited schedule this week. I have a busy life. Thank you. Living in a world of cover-up and guilty and must prove our innocence. Karen Read's case is nothing compared to the Idaho 4. Thank you. There's Deb. I feel BA and Higgy destroyed their phones, and butt dials are so important for jurors to hear. Yep. Stronger Together standout. That dates might be reassessed. We'll tune into Britt Happens and follow Mizzy for more information on that date. Dennis says there are plants, probably 25% in jury selections for the odds that some make the 12 is big. Take that to the bank. Richard, thank you. What was decibel level allowed us at the field test collisions? I don't know the exact decibel level, Richard. I'm not sure what that total was. There's so many numbers that it's tough to remember all of them. But thank you, Richard. Thank you for the super chat. CW brings the DNA lady on rebuttal to say there's no dog DNA. I would lose my mind. Yeah, no, absolutely as well. I mean, there'd have to be, in any case, if there is a person like that that's brought on, on rebuttal, yeah, I'd have to imagine there's dog DNA on that arm. If there's not, yeah, I'd lose my mind too. Luke B. Brennan gives blue hair from Simpsons vibes. That's funny. And Sunny Day is a super sticker. All right, well, folks, thank you so much. Let me just do one more check of the donations to Karen Read's fundraiser before we leave here today. Okay, that's going to be the final. All right, so the final number is going to be the $6,492.80. Thank you guys so much. That's going to Karen Read's Defense Fund. That is fantastic. I have no clue when I'm going to be back on a show. Just stand by for my announcements later this week. We'll see what I can do. But other than that, it was a great show. Thank you to Mizzy. Thank you to Britt Happens. Thank you to Attorney Nan Gallagher. Thank you to Brian LTL. And additionally, I just want to thank Deanna as well. She could not make the show tonight, but she tried, but she had a very busy weekend, and just all the best to Deanna. So just thank you to everybody. I believe the Glare is live right now. Please go ahead and tune into him, and have a great evening, folks. From MazzaMedia, I am Mark. Please subscribe to this channel. I like to it's always good to gain subscribers. That way too, when you want to watch another show of mine, you can tune in and get alerts when I'm live and all that. Usually weekend shows for me on this channel. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. A big week. And who knows when Karen Read will be freed, but hopefully it's very, very soon. Sooner rather than later. From MazzaMedia, I am Mark. Thank you so much, and have a great night. Take care, guys.